Chapter 261, Food Art. Book 4. Yuki grabbed both of them by the sleeves before either mage or healer could scatter back into the celebration chaos. Okay, we have to go now. Come on, she chirped in one breath, dragging Tramar and Fedre toward the edge of the square like a determined lanternfly. Around them, the festival was still in full swing. Players dancing with freed workers, merchants haggling cheerfully, someone juggling flaming fruit because fire mages should never be left unsupervised. Someone else shouted, "Free! Drinks for Anion who can spell out tonight, backwards!" Yuki ignored all. Mostly. She kept humming nervously and calling, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," as she wove past people. "We need to ride there," she repeated, eyes wide and urgent. Tramar blinked at her, confused, his prickly hat slightly crooked from being dragged. "Ride where? Now? Yuki, it's evening in Rimelion. I'm tired. I used, like." He waved vaguely, so much energy taking over this city. Phaedra adjusted her scarf, the gesture fluid as a cat stretching. "He means he is Trasenki," she said, her voice low and amused. "I am not cranky," Tramar lied. Yuki planted her feet, bouncing anxiously. "We need to be there at sunrise. The labyrinth opens then, only then. It's a spirit trial, so timing is super duper precise, and if we're late, Her throat made a panic squeak. Phaedra brushed a calming hand down her shoulder. "Respire, mon canul. You will not explode." "So," Yuki continued rapidly, "well, ride there now, then log out, sleep in the real world, wake up in 7 hours, log back in, and go straight in." Tramar stared at her, then blinked slowly, then groaned. 7 hours? Yuki, that's not sleep, that's a nap." He crossed his arms. "I require full cycles. My brain is delicate. Your brain is loud," Phaedra murmured. Tramar ignored her. "If I don't get enough sleep, my fire magic fizzles. I need to focus. The last time that happened, I burned my own boots." Phaedra smiled with wicked sweetness, tilting her head. "If you cannot fall asleep, Sherry, I can keep you company. I am remarkably soothing." Yuki nearly choked on her own saliva. Tramar pretended he didn't hear it with the desperation of a man who absolutely did. Away, horses. We need horses." "Yes," Yuki exclaimed, clutching her map. "I marked where to find cheap ones. Wait, where is? Hang on, no, this is the bakery. Oh no, why did I draw so many little fox doodles? Where's the horse icon? Why did I put it next to the pastry sketch?" Her map looked like a sugar-high child had attempted cartography. Phaedra stepped close, her hand grazing Yuki's cheek as she leaned past. Then she reached out and stopped the first passerby, a young woman balancing 2 baskets of fruit. "Bonsoir," Phaedra purred. "We seek horses. Where might we find some at this hour?" The woman blinked, then laughed. "Best ones? Down near the port if the invaders didn't destroy it. Cheaper ones are closer though, just around that corner." She pointed toward a narrow alley lit by lanterns. Thank you very much," Yuki babbled. The woman bowed lightly and continued on. Yuki shoved the map into her satchel incorrectly. Future. Yuki would definitely panic about that, then beamed at her 2 companions. "Okay, cheap horses are that way. Let's go." Tramar sighed loudly, muttering something about sacrificing sleep for fox spirits, but followed. Phaedra slipped into step beside them, scarf fluttering, expression soft with mischief. "Allez, messieurs, let us chase the sunrise." The stables sat at the end of the narrow road, lanterns strung above like soft amber beads. Inside, a young man, 16, maybe 17, was brushing down a caramel mare with trained motions, humming the way people hum when they're bored but pretending they aren't. He didn't look up. Yuki was about to wave, politely, maybe too enthusiastically, when something on the stable wall caught her eye. She froze mid-step. Wait, hold on." Phaedra stopped, looked at Yuki, looked at the wall, then sighed into the night air with all the theatrical suffering of a saint punished for someone else's enthusiasm. "Evidement." Tramar blinked. What is she? "Oh dear, Saivrin. Paint." "It's not just paint," Yuki whispered, dropping into a crouch like a detective discovering ancient ruins. She pressed a hand to the wood. "Look, the mustard isn't original." Indeed, beneath the uneven yellow coat was a much older layer poking through, cracked lines, faded color, shapes that absolutely weren't random. "Oh, for the love of moonlight," Phaedra muttered. "Yuki, mon cœur trouve ton cheval. before you start dating the wall. I'll go with her, Shamar said, already wandering toward an equipment shop across the path. Maybe they sell energy potions or earplugs, Phaedra murmured sweetly, steering him by the elbow. For both of us. Well, plugs, yeah, but potions, do they work through the capsule? If Charlie can be an elf, maybe I can get caffeine. Yuki barely noticed. She leaned closer, breath fogging the old paint as she created a small light to inspect it. This was fascinating. Under the peeling mustard was a full mural, tiny stylized images of plates, mugs, pastries, skewers, an entire lineup of dishes and drinks. The shapes were simple but distinct. A lattice pie, a pitcher, something that looked aggressively like soup. Oh ho ho ho, Yuki whispered. Food art. That's an old tradition here. That buzzing historian warmth lit up in her chest. She brushed one fingertip lightly along a surviving curve. I saw something like this in the Altandai Civic Chronicles yesterday when I was totally not procrastinating. She squinted. There was that merchant, something? Rallian? Rakev? Something. She clicked her tongue. Anyway, she remembered the entry. A wealthy man bought an entire row of houses, repainted them with food murals to mark his signature enterprise. And, yes, he turned the entire space into a walk-in kitchen where he hired the province's greatest chef. Nobles traveled across the Altandai-controlled region just to eat here. Yuki lifted her head, gaze sweeping the road. There, tiny punctures in the stone, several dozen, perfectly spaced. Oh, wow, she breathed. Those are table marks. They bolted them to the ground. She straightened, happy sparks fluttering under her ribs. His chef wrote a recipe book, very rare. Even a grandmaster wanted a copy. Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. Her thoughts jumped again. Charlie had mentioned a man joining Rimebreak, a pancake maker or a baking enthusiast, who would absolutely combust if he found out about a lost provincial recipe collection. Secret baking lore. Hidden culinary treasure. Possibly spices older than entire cities. Yuki's pulse sped up happily. She switched to full archivist mode, snapped screenshots from several angles, scribbled notes in her small notebook, her handwriting increasingly chaotic as her excitement climbed. The stable boy, brushing his horse, glanced at her with the slow, confused look of someone watching a magical butterfly examine their wall with reverence. He said nothing. Yuki almost didn't notice. Phaedra returned first, sweeping back in with her usual effortless glide. Tramar followed, carrying a bag that jangled suspiciously. Phaedra folded her arms, expression warm with mischief. Mon encyclopédie. Are we ready? Or will you be restoring this entire district by dawn? Yuki hugged her notebook to her chest. I found a lost food mural. Bien sûr que oui, Phaedra said with amused resignation. You would discover gastronomy secrets at a horse stable. Tramar sighed. Only Yuki could. Phaedra's smile curled, patient and predatory at once. Très bien. Now that history class is concluded, shall we obtain the horses? She asked with a lazy smile that said she already knew the answer. Yuki nodded eagerly and led them toward the stable entrance. She kept glancing sideways at Phaedra, waiting, hoping the healer would take over the scary part, talking to strangers. Instead, Phaedra grinned. Try it first. Yuki's soul made a tiny squeak. Still, she squared her shoulders, stepped forward, and bowed. Hello? We would like to borrow horses for a few days. We need 1,000, the stable boy cut in without looking up. For 3 Ramsey horses. Yuki blinked. 1,000 what? He finally lifted his gaze, brows raised. Gold. Each. Good luck finding another stable open at this hour after the queen freed half the workforce. Yuki's mouth opened, then closed, then trembled. She turned back to Phaedra and Tramar, eyes shiny with betrayal. The price went up by 100 times. She looked genuinely devastated. Phaedra made a gentle noise. We robbed the grandmasters today, mon connard. You have the coin. We weren't supposed to keep it, Yuki whispered fiercely. Scamantha said they're not real for players. They aren't, Phaedra agreed calmly. You can't melt them down, and anyone trained can tell they're fake in 2 seconds. Yuki frowned. So? Phaedra's smile sharpened. Watch. She stepped forward with the grace of a woman approaching a stage she owned. The stable boy looked up again, then kept looking, eyes widening just a fraction as Phaedra approached like a drifting ribbon of night silk. Bonsoir, she purred, His hand froze mid-brush. Hello, miss. Phaedra walked in a slow, unhurried arc around him, her scarf trailing just enough to brush his shoulder. You work very hard, she murmured, voice warm as cocoa. So late, so dedicated. Quel dévouement. He swallowed visibly, straightening. Yes, someone has to. People need horses. Oui, and brave boys like you provide. Her fingers grazed his sleeve barely a touch, but enough to tilt his breath. Tell me, that price you gave my friend, was that truly for us, or for anyone foolish enough to walk in tonight? He flushed. Well, I mean, Phaedra leaned in, lips near his ear, voice slipping into a whisper. Because surely a gentleman like you would not overcharge tired travelers. His ears turned scarlet. Especially, she continued, sliding a small gem from her sleeve when shown proper appreciation. She caught his hand lightly and placed the gem in his palm. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she lifted his hand and brushed a kiss over his knuckles, not suggestive, not blatant, just devastating. The boy forgot how to breathe. Phaedra stepped back, smiling with perfect softness. The normal price, she said, and we will be very grateful. He nodded so hard the mare startled. Yai, yes, normal price, of course, right away. Anything you need. Moments later, 3 horses were waiting at the road's edge. Tramar stared at Phaedra. How do you do that? Phaedra swung into her saddle as lightly as slipping into a warm bath. I speak to people, she said simply. Kindly, persuasively, attractively. Pick whatever verb helps you sleep, chérie. Yuki mounted her horse, still pink with awe. I could never do that. Phaedra leaned over, tapped her nose, and winked. Don't worry, mon coureur. You charm the world with fox puzzles. I charm it with other things. With the horses secured and the path ahead dimly lit by lanterns and moonlight, the 3 rode out of the stables. The horses were gentle, well-fed, and slightly confused by the volume of festival noise drifting out of Altandai's gates. Yuki led hers by the reins, because everyone else was doing it, rows upon rows of people leaving the city on foot, with horses beside them. Riding through a crowd this dense would be rude and dangerous, and Yuki would rather swallow a gatia spoon than hurt someone accidentally. Besides, the line of torches along the main road made everything feel warm and safe. The unguarded gate felt strange, but freeing an entire city apparently came with certain chaos. People streamed in and out like a living river, laughing, chattering, juggling food. Once they passed the last cluster of people, the road opened, quieting into countryside darkness. Tramar glanced at his horse, then at Yuki, then back at his horse. I didn't. When do I get riding skill? He asked, genuinely alarmed. Yuki hopped lightly onto her saddle with practiced ease. You get it when you learn it, she said cheerfully, patting her mount's neck. It's not that hard. I got mine after spending 2 weeks in an old castle on the western coast. I was searching for a battle. Tramar groaned. Please, Yuki, before you tell me about a skirmish during a 100-year war or a regional dispute over pudding. This is Rimelion. Rimelion is supposed to auto-learn this stuff. He crossed his arms irritably. They both turned to look at Phaedra. She returned their stares with a serene, perfectly composed smile, then placed one elegant foot in the stirrup and glided onto her horse as if gravity respected her. My family owns a farm, she said lightly. I have been riding various animals since I was a charming little terror. Of course you were, Tramar muttered. He attempted to mount, and missed, completely. He fell backwards into the dirt with a thud that made Yuki wince. Oh no, Tramar, are you? I am fine, he groaned, refusing to move. Phaedra exhaled, not annoyed, just resigned in that affectionate way she reserved for people she liked despite themselves. She dismounted with gentle ease and crouched beside him. Come, she said, offering her hand. Up you go. The ground is not your destiny. He grabbed her hand, she braced, and up he went. Yuki watched as Phaedra shifted into full, competent farm girl mode, a mode she clearly tried not to advertise, but was very good at. She guided Tramar step by step. She tapped his foot lightly. Here. This metal bit? Yes, put your weight there. Not on the horse's flank unless you wish to be launched. She nudged his posture. Back straight. You are riding, not attempting a fire mage pose. She adjusted his grip. Hold the reins like they are something alive, not a spell you're strangling. Tramar muttered. I'm not strangling. You are absolutely strangling, she breathed. Relax your hands. He tried. Failed. Tried again. Phaedra nodded. Better. She stepped back, hands on her hips, evaluating him like a very patient instructor. Now, breathe. The horse can feel when you are panicking. I'm not panicking, of course. That is why your shoulders are in your ears. He lowered them with a grumpy noise. Meanwhile, Yuki drifted to the city wall, running her fingers over a set of deep dents, old impact marks, circular. She created a small light and inspected it. Maybe siege weapons or training or… Yuki, Phaedra called smoothly. He lives. Yuki turned, and Tramar was finally on his horse, sitting stiffly like someone who had been placed upon a throne against his will. I hate this, he announced. The system is helping, but I have to do it alone. Phaedra mounted again with effortless grace, patting her horse's neck. You will hate it less once we move. Also, if you fall, and letting Yuki catch you, I won't fall. We will see, she whispered. They nudged their horses forward, settling into an easy pace. Phaedra looked around, amused. You know not everyone rides horses here. I saw a man earlier on something that looked like a feathered llama. Her lips curved, and there is a little cat beast trotting around that is far too cute for its own good. Oh, Yuki brightened instantly. Yes, because Altandai borders a savannah-like. Cherry, Phaedra interrupted gently. I only meant it was amusing, not a research prompt. Oh, sorry, no apology needed, she smiled. Just breathe. I know your excitement is trying to escape your body. I am excited, Yuki beamed. Well, get there, log out, sleep, and tomorrow morning. We enter the labyrinth, Tramar sighed, rubbing his eyes. On 7 hours of sleep. Well, make it, Yuki insisted, glowing with pure determination. The Sun Fox, the real Sun Fox, tomorrow. Phaedra laughed softly. Then onward, my brave little light. They rode into the night. Chapter 262, Queen's Surprise. Book 4. Back to Charlie. I walked toward the elevator in my penthouse, stretching my arms over my head in a long, luxurious yawn that cracked every vertebra in my spine. Honestly, I muttered to no one, being a queen is so exhausting. Another yawn tore out of me, even bigger. I grinned at myself, pushed all that temple nonsense to, well, other people. Good delegation. I deserve snacks. One of the best perks of having a single merged body now. Meditation worked in both realms. 1 session per day, 1 calm down timer. A faint, imaginary image of my mum's disapproving face flashed across my mind like a ghosty buff. I shuddered. Fine, 2 meditations. For safety, for health, for avoiding mother-shaped trauma. With that settled, I stepped into my company's corporate cafeteria. The room was quietly bustling, office workers hunched over bowls, hollow screens above tables, the comforting hum of coffee machines battling the clatter of forks. It smelled of cinnamon, curry, and I stared down on everyone from the posters. I was getting used to it, it wasn't that. Bad thought, no. At the far end, in the bright corner that still had a view of the outside, I spotted Lunaris. She sat hunched over a plate, smiling nervously as Night Swallow loomed beside her like an emotional support shadow. Lunaris was looking entirely too innocent for someone I absolutely needed to scold. A few tables behind them were Yuki, Phaedra, and Tramar. Was she already starting the quest? Whoa, she was fast. I made a beeline for the snack bar, but my brain was already rehearsing the lecture. How does one scold Lunaris? Is there a manual? A protocol? A handling your overexcited future best swords? Woman for Dummies handbook? Why did I not have one? The lady behind the food counter gave me a warm, toothy smile. She was surrounded by trays, soups, pastries, glass jars of sweets, and one stainless steel box emitting suspicious fog. What would you like, lady? She asked. I blinked. What's the most popular thing? Her smile turned mysterious. Ah, the favorite. She reached beneath the counter and produced something that looked brown, like a pancake, a nicely browned pancake. Except it moved. Slightly. Like a gelatin creature trying very hard to pretend to be normal food. She placed it delicately on a blue dish embossed with a tiny silver snowflake. Queen's surprise, she said proudly. I stared at it. Then at her. Then back at the sentient? Pastry? Queen's surprise? I repeated slowly, raising an eyebrow. She only smiled wider. It is made by our secret chef. Most popular item. A secret chef. Pound cake? I grinned. Great. Fantastic. Can't wait. I thanked her, picked up my suspiciously wiggly dish, and headed straight toward Lunaris, ready for round one of the How to Keep My Cute Warrior Disaster Alive talk. The cake wriggled on the plate. I slid into the seat beside them, and my eyes immediately caught the disaster on the table. At least 10 identical blue plates stacked like Lunaris had been trying to drown her feelings in sentient dessert. She sat slumped forward, shoulders small, her usual sparkle dimmed to a flicker. The moment she noticed me, her whole body jolted. Her eyes widened, huge, glossy, and she swallowed hard. "Hey, hello, lady," she whispered. Night Swallow gave a tight, disciplined nod, the kind that tried to hide the fact she was clearly worried. "Queen." "Hey, both of you," I said, settling across from them. The silence sat heavy. Luna staring at the table, Swallow half hovering like she was ready to physically block sadness if needed. My spoon dipped into the surprise, which jiggled like it had stage fright. I took a bite. Soft sweetness, warm, strangely nostalgic then. Bam! A flavor explosion so good I nearly moaned. I blinked aggressively to hide it. "So," I said, clearing my throat, "let's not beat around the bush." Lunaris nodded nervously, hands twisting in her lap. "I'll resign tomorrow." "What?" Swallow and I said at the same time. "I failed the team," Lunaris began, voice cracking, but Swallow was faster. She leaned in, cutting her off. "What about Sir Leafington?" I froze and blinked. "Who?" Swallow's lips twitched. She actually giggled, then immediately sat bolt upright, spine rigid, voice perfectly deadpan. "She loves Sir Leafington like her boyfriend," Lunaris squeaked, face flaming, and punched Swallow's arm with all the force of a sad kitten. I leaned forward. "No quitting," I said firmly. "Swallow literally risked her life for you, so nope, not allowed." Lunaris wilted, staring at her trembling hands. But I continued, leveling a look at her. "I expect you to work double as hard to catch up. Over time. Mandatory training. Whatever Lola assigns for you to have better decision-making. Understood?" Her breath hitched. "But I lost my class, my sword, my cape, everything." Her voice was so soft it barely rose above the cafeteria hum. The pain in her eyes hit harder than any boss fight. I turned to Swallow, eyebrow raised. She shook her head immediately. "I haven't told her yet, only just arrived. I was helping at the square, because they needed the princess of… never mind." She blushed. I blinked at her. Lunaris blinked at both of us. What? She asked weakly. I inhaled and pulled up my inventory mentally. The connection answered, and I could feel it. Would it work here? Well, you never know until you try. I reached into empty air, and the air shimmered. The Cronus Blade shard materialized in my palm. At the same moment, a notification flickered in front of my eyes. "Attention! You used inventory. This was not intended to smuggle items between realms. Please refrain from intentionally bringing items permanently to Earth. You do not want to lose this privilege." The girls didn't see the warning. They were too busy staring at the shard in my palm. "Swallow risked everything and snagged it from Brian," I said, holding it out so Lunaris could see it properly. "Sadly, she didn't get your sword or your cape." Night Swallow's cheeks immediately flushed, and she looked away, embarrassed, maybe a little proud, and very aware Luna was watching. Then she realized ID pulled the shard onto Earth. Her head snapped back so fast. Cute black bow almost slipped. "How?" Lunaris asked first, breathless. I shrugged and grinned. "Because Juliet is amazing?" Night Swallow's glare could have cut stone. I winked. Lunaris shook her head, confused. How did you get it here?" I closed my hand, letting the shard vanish back into my inventory. It took a lot more mana and focus, like pushing power through syrup, but it worked. "I told you, I'm real," I mumbled, "that Rimelion is real, that all of this is real." They both nodded slowly. And honestly, if I were in their place, I would have fainted or screamed or demanded a science explanation from Yuki, but they took it like champs. Lunaris looked so small, so worried, so lost, and suddenly an idea blossomed in my brain. "Oh, I can weaponize this. I can force her to train. Last time she said she was tired and watched Tok Tak." "Perfect. You," I said, pointing at Lunaris with my spoon, "need to ask your boyfriend for sword tips." Her ears twitched. Ian is, bad," Night Swallow said immediately. "Luna is 10 times better, he's just a buffoon." Lunaris gasped and slapped at Swallow's arm in a tiny offended flail. Swallow effortlessly leaned out of range, expression smooth, except for the corner of her mouth, which betrayed a smile she absolutely didn't want seen. No, I said, waving a hand. He knows Mr. Kai. He can teach you, I think. I bit my lip and leaned in. But I need you to train, really train. He's probably in some random monastery being super zen. At least he won't speak about bread as if it has a deeper meaning. Lunari stared at her hands. She nodded. Barely. I will. Good, I said. Because only then, I tapped my now empty plate with my spoon. Only then will I give you another chance with the shard. She looked up at me, and her mouth quivered until the tears came. Big ones. Quiet, trembling. Don't look at me, tears. Oh, Syvrin, damn me. I made her cry. Before I could say anything, Lunaris twisted her chair. Then she bowed so low her hair spilled over the seat. Yes, Queen, she declared, her voice fierce in a way that startled half the cafeteria into silence. I won't disappoint you again, and I won't leave the monastery until I've completed your task. She then whispered a shaky thank you to Night Swallow, bowed to me again, and rocketed out of the cafeteria on her chair like a critical missile. I blinked at the space where she'd been. Tumble. Tumble? Okay, wow, I breathed, turning slowly toward Night Swallow. You know her better. Is this normal? Night Swallow chuckled under her breath and then shrugged. You gave her a mission, she said, as if that explained everything. She won't stop. I rubbed my temple. I didn't mean it literally. Swallow's shoulders lifted just a fraction. I know, she said, but she doesn't. I slumped back in my chair, staring at the wiggly remains of the Queen's surprise, like maybe it had answers. Great, I sighed. Back to Yuki, sometime back. Okay, Yuki murmured, stretching her arms above her head. Okay, we get food, we rest, and tomorrow the dungeon. Tramar rubbed his face. I need coffee. And an IV drip. And maybe a resurrection spell. Fedra patted his cheek. You'll live, Sherry. Probably. They filed into the elevator, descending onto the main cafeteria floor. The moment the doors slid open, warm light and the smell of fresh sweets washed over them. Yuki inhaled deeply. I can't wait to be in the dungeon. Finally, the words tumbled out bright and unfiltered, glowing with anticipation. They ordered quickly. Rice bowls for Trama, an elaborate soup for Fedra, something vegetable-heavy for Yuki, and turned to find seats. Yuki's smile faltered the moment she spotted Lunaris. The duelist sat alone at a table near the wall, hunched over, shoulders trembling slightly. Her mismatched eyes were fixed on the untouched food in front of her. No spark, no manic sword nerd energy, just quiet. Yuki's feet moved automatically toward her, but Fedra's hand closed gently around her arm. Not now, the healer murmured, her touch soft. She guided Yuki toward a table a little farther away. Yuki stumbled after her, confused. Why? She looks... Why? Fedra arched a brow. You don't know what happened? No, Yuki whispered. Last thing I saw was her running away alone. Did something happen after? They sat down. Tramar sighed and stabbed his rice as if snuffed his fire. Fedra waited until the noise of the cafeteria wrapped around them. Then she leaned in slightly, voice low. Lunaris fought Lisa's classmate. She lost. Yuki's heart clenched. Oh, she lost more than the fight, Fedra continued. She lost her legendary sword, her class, and her cape with the sock. Yuki's fingers tightened around her bowl. Her mind spun backward. Luna laughing at Catherine tripping. Luna cheering during the search for the sword. Luna proudly wearing her absurd sock banner. She risked another glance. Juliet had moved beside Lunaris, awkwardly patting her back, like someone comforting a wounded kitten terrified to lift its head. Poor Luna, Yuki whispered. I should have, I don't know, helped. But she just ran, and then... You cannot save everyone, Mon Canur, she whispered. Yuki swallowed hard and Queen Charlie had entered. Tramar let out a low whistle. Wow! She looks exactly like in the posters. Yuki snorted. That's because she is the poster. They laughed briefly and ate their meal. A bit later, Lunaris moved as if lightning had hit her spine, and her chair scraped violently. Yes, Queen, she cried. I won't disappoint you again. And I won't leave the monastery until I've completed your task. Yuki froze. Monastery? Task? Had Charlie sent her? Charlie's expression was impossible to read as Phaedra leaned in, whispering in a tone meant only for their table. So it's true. Her reputation. She sent Luna to the monastery for her failure. And Luna agreed? Yuki didn't know. Charlie's gaze swept the room and landed briefly on Yuki. Yuki panicked and waved. Charlie's expression softened, but Yuki turned back to the table, voice barely a breath. We need to succeed. Chapter 263 Shadows, Doing Math. Book 4 Yuki materialized back into Rimelion with a soft shimmer of pixels and chilly night air kissing her cheeks. For a moment she stood still, blinking at the quiet world. The others weren't logged in yet. It was just her, the stars, the river, and the faint hum of nighttime insects. Her breath fogged in pale curls as she turned in a slow circle, half expecting their horses to have wandered off or been eaten by an ambitious raccoon. But no. There they were, tied exactly where she and her friends had left them, by a jagged cluster of rocks overlooking the riverbank. The horses raised their heads lazily when she approached, as if offended she'd even imagined them being irresponsible. Good morning, Yuki whispered, patting their warm necks, or good night, or something. The terrain looked different under starlight, more colder. She stepped onto the rocky outcrop and crouched, running a hand along the stone. Time had cracked it open, water had smoothed it, wind had eaten away the soft edges. But the scars, those remained. Thin radial fractures, melted surfaces, strange ripples frozen in stone. Then she spotted it. A soft glimmer, pale, translucent. Exactly like the illustrations. Yuki inhaled sharply, breath catching in her throat. Oh! She summoned a small globe of light, letting it hover near her shoulder. The glow washed over the stone surface, revealing more of the material embedded in the cracks. Sunglass. It had an unmistakable texture, smooth like half-melted bottle glass, but cloudy inside, streaked with delicate lines like frozen lightning. The edges shimmered faintly, as if kissed by dawn, just like Libyan desert glass back on Earth. She traced a finger along the surface. The almanac's theory returned instantly. Grandmaster-level wind magic blasted small stones, sand, and debris together. The heat fused them. Rainfall and time lithified the mix into a conglomerate. Sunglass. It wasn't valuable, not in any economic or enchanting sense. Just pretty. Just a scar of history. Yuki stood there for a long moment, imagining the force. The roar. The collision of wind and dirt and magic so fierce it melted the ground itself. She swung her sword once, twice. On the third strike, a small shard popped loose, aquamarine-colored, sharp at one end, smooth at the other. The moonlight caught in its body, glowing faintly like a trapped drop of sky. Mine, she whispered, smiling as she tucked it into her inventory. Souvenir for Rhinebreak Museum. With renewed energy, she climbed the rocks, boots scraping lightly, her light flickering across the rough terrain. She reached the top and paused, and her breath left her in a quiet, stunned exhale. Because across the river, just a dozen meters away, the world looked alive. Rolling hills, lush grasses, morning mist rising from the fields like soft breath and pre-dawn light. Farms dotted the landscape with lanterns glowing faintly around them. But this side, she turned slowly, taking it in. As far as she could see, the land was dead. Not barren like sand, not abandoned like fallow fields, just dead. The soil was pale gray, lifeless, powdered like ash, as if something had drained it of color, drained it of growth, drained it of reality. Yuki tightened her grip on the rock beside her, tiny shivers creeping up her spine. This is where it happened, she whispered to herself. Whatever had killed this land, whatever had turned soil into cold dust, was the same force that left Sunglass buried in the stone, the same force that once belonged to the Sun Fox. She clenched her fist, imagining herself being so powerful she could change such a vast area. She swallowed. The others would be here soon. Yuki was still staring across the dead soil wasteland when two soft, familiar voices echoed behind her. Her teammates appeared down on the riverbank, first Tramar, who manifested like a disgruntled ghost, eyes half-lidded and posture screaming, "Why am I alive?" followed by Phaedra, who arrived like she had been awake for 3 hours, meditating with scented candles. "Hi!" Yuki shouted, waving both arms frantically. Up here! Up here!" Tramar lifted a hand limply. "Not so loud, my soul didn't spawn in properly." Phaedra climbed the rocks with quiet, fluid ease, as she'd never once tripped in her life. Her expression held a faintly entertained curve. You look magnifique, she told him, tone warm and lightly mocking in equal measure. Shamar groaned, cracked open that glowing glue vial had bragged about all yesterday, something Scamantha had called Manar Fizz V0. 3, 1, and chugged half like a desperate alchemist and climb up with Phaedra. I need 30 of these, he lamented, and an emotional support animal. Phaedra flicked his forehead with a perfectly manicured nail. You have Yuki. I said animal, Tramar muttered. Yuki ignored him and practically bounced in place. Guys, look, 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 sun's coming. They all turned, and the sunrise unfurled across the horizon. The first edge of gold crested the far hills, soft peach-pink light spilling over the grasslands on the other side of the river, catching the dew, lighting every blade of grass like glass threads. Then the color shifted as it crossed the river, reaching the dead soil. Where the hills looked alive, hopeful this side looked like a graveyard of daylight. The sun painted the pale gray earth in shades of ash and honey, creating a haunting contrast. Beauty laid over ruin, light refusing to give up on land that no longer remembered. Yuki held her breath. Her fingers curled around her package, and she unfurled the sun fox's twilight paw. It glowed faintly, like a sleeping ember stirred awake. The air warmed around her, not in temperature, but in presence. A hush fell over the world, the kind that made even Tremar stop complaining. They gathered close as the first full ray of sunlight touched the paw. It was like watching a flame ignite without heat. Golden strands, thin as hair, bright as magic, shot out from the paw in sudden fierce whips of light. Yuki gasped, because the strands didn't just shine, they reached. Toward her, through her. She felt a gentle tug deep in her chest, a feeling like warm fingers brushing her magic, flipping pages in her soul as if her essence were a book being read. For a moment, she wasn't Yuki she was seeing, understood. And then, as if satisfied with what it found, the rays pulled away and burst outward. Threads of golden dawn spooled into the dead field, stitching the air like seamstress light, trying to weave the world back together. Each thread left a fading shimmer behind, like an embroidered promise. Yuki swallowed and quickly stuffed the paw back into her inventory, heart fluttering in her throat. Before any of them could speak, the air in front of them cracked. A crystalline sound, like glass bending under pressure. A line formed in the empty space. Then another. Then fractures spiderweb outward, each glowing with soft dawnlight. A tear. A translucent seam in reality. The tear widened, peeling open slowly until a vertical curtain of pure dawnlight billowed between the cracks, glowing, shifting, almost behaving like a liquid. Not a portal or a door, but more like a veil, a sheet of sunrise hung upright in the world. Through it, Yuki saw a forest. Not the dead wasteland around them or the grey ruin, but the forest as it once was, lush, golden, trembling with morning mist and foxfire sparks. "OHSAE, Varen," Tramar shouted, suddenly wide awake. He darted forward. "Guys, look at this. Behind the gate it looks normal." Phaedra caught his sleeve. "Tramar, attends, do not." He yanked free, already halfway immersed in the glow. "No, it's a fine look it's." He stopped. His face twisted. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear static from his vision. Actually, hang on, if you look through it, it's..." He froze again. Gods, it's my brain. No, nope, nope, nope. He backed up fast, hand on his forehead, nearly tripping over a rock. Too much thinking in the morning, he muttered, collapsing against a boulder. Phaedra let out a slow, suffering exhale, half sigh, half. "I warned you." She patted his back as though soothing an overheated dog. "Mon pauvre imbécile," she murmured, her voice full of amusement. "You ran into it like a toddler chasing glitter. Truly, what outcome were you imagining?" Yuki didn't react, her focus locked onto the veil of dawn light as if a string had pulled taut from her chest, straight into the shining tear. The golden threads along its edges fluttered like faint foxtails, beckoning her forward. She stepped closer. The air changed as she approached, not colder or warmer, but alert, humming in a way her manner recognized. The dawn-light shimmer rippled, bending slightly toward her touch, as if it were tasting her intent. She didn't wait. "Yuki!" Tramar tried, but she walked through in one clean, sure breath, light kissing her skin, her hair, the tips of her fingers. For a moment, she felt folded into sunlight. Warm, weightless, as if drifting through the pause between blinking and waking. Then she was standing on moss. Phaedra followed a second later, graceful even when passing through literal magic. Tramar stumbled through the veil, half bracing for another headache. Okay, this is fine. My brain is not exploding. Good start, he muttered. The moment he stepped in, the veil behind them snapped shut. A soft hiss, a ripple of gold, and then nothing. They spun around in surprise, but the tear was gone. There was no shine, no crackling glass, and no seam in the world to mark where they'd arrived. Just forest, endless forest, with no visible beginning or end. No horizon, no thinning tree line, and no familiar road. Just trees. Towering, pale-barked, their leaves shimmering faintly like scales catching light. Yuki's breath caught. Everything looked real, but not quite right. The leaves rustled when wind passed through, but their shimmer remained even afterward, a soft afterglow. Shadows bent at uneven angles, as if the sun illuminating them was nudging everything 1 inch in the wrong direction. And every tree trunk held knot patterns, spirals, loops, whirls, that repeated in unsettling precision, like someone copy-pasted the forest through a magical editing tool. "It's so pretty," Yuki whispered, reaching out. She touched a nearby trunk. The bark felt rough, warm, undeniably solid, but when her palm pressed deeper, a faint ripple of light shivered across the surface before vanishing. Tramar groaned behind her. "My head hurts again. There are too many visual illusions. I swear the shadows are trying to do math on me." "Math cannot hurt you, Sherry," Phaedra said lightly. "It can, and it has," Tramar snapped, rubbing his temples. Phaedra, with a suspiciously playful little hum, lifted her staff and tapped one tree with a crisp crack. The tree shuddered. A pulse of gold raced up its bark like startled veins, then faded, leaving the trunk perfectly unharmed. Phaedra murmured, tilting her head. "Très solide. Even illusions possess more stability than your confidence." Yuki's curiosity flared. She pressed her shoulder gently against another trunk, testing resistance. It didn't bend, didn't glitch, didn't flicker. It felt like any other normal tree, a beautiful, slightly phosphorescent tree. Tramar, however, had to test things his own way. He formed a small firebolt in his hand, no bigger than a candle flame, and flicked it at a cluster of roots. The bolt sizzled as it hit. For a second it burnt normally, embers spreading, smoke curling, bark charring black. Then the fire ran back up the flame, zipping into the air like rewound footage. The burn marks folded inward, disappearing as though the tree inhaled them, leaving the bark smooth and unchanged. Tramar stared. "I did not like that." "Then stop provoking it," Phaedra murmured, tone gentle but edged. "Do not burn the sacred labyrinth, mon chéri." "I wasn't, it was science," Tramar muttered. Phaedra snorted quietly. "Yes, and you wonder why it dislikes you." Yuki couldn't help it. She was blinking from one tree to another, a full spectrum giddy glow in her chest. Her fingers danced over bark and leaves and shimmering shadows, her mind firing off theories faster than she could voice them. "This is incredible," she breathed. "The illusions are layered with environmental magic, maybe sunrise tide, and the regrowth function is." A branch rustled, and all three froze. They spotted a deliberate movement in the canopy above. Yuki tipped her head back slowly. Something shifted between the leaves, something light-footed, quick, weight-balanced with predatory grace. A flick of pale fur, a shimmer of light. Then, silence. Yuki's heart hammered as Tramar whispered, "Please tell me that was not that fox." Phaedra leaned in. "Please tell me it was, Sherry. I would adore meeting a divine fox that dramatic." Yuki swallowed, eyes wide, smile half forming. Whatever it was, they weren't alone in the Sun Fox's labyrinth. Chapter 264 Left is Right. Book 4. The system window bloomed before her eyes, bright against the shimmering forest. Step 4 completed, enter the Sun Fox's labyrinth. Step 5, survive the trial and uncover the fate of the Sun Fox. Warning, the labyrinth responds to intent, perception, and magical affinity. Illusions may become reality. Reality may become illusion. Trust nothing. Question everything. First trial, just a trick. Objective. Prove your worth to the guardians of the outer threshold. The words hung in her vision, pulsing once before fading to translucent at the edge of her awareness. Yuki's breath caught. She squinted into the branches overhead, trying to catch the shape that had moved earlier. Fox? Bird? Some kind of leaf sprite? Then something else shifted to the left, then to the right. Then 3 feet directly above her head, in a blur of gold and shadow that made her eyes water. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, that is not a fox, not a monkey, not a... what is that?" A creature clung upside down to a branch, knee-high in size, staring straight at her with unblinking intensity. It had a fox's narrow face, pointed snout, soft tufts of cheek fur, but its eyes were wrong. Circular, glowing yellow pupils that flickered like candle flames caught in a draught. Its arms and legs were too long, too nimble, monkey-like and unsettling, ending in dexterous fingers built for climbing. Several more creatures perched beside it, their tails trailing behind them like ribbons of condensed light, flickering and rippling, as if woven from animated dawn itself. Their bodies shimmered with that same wrongness, not solid fur, but a strange heat haze outline that wavered at the edges, refusing to settle into a single state. Illusion and substance layered together, fighting for dominance. Above their heads floated faint interface text: Dawn Trickster, Liver 30th. Type: Uncommon HP 850850. Yuki swallowed. Trickster? But they look. The creature made a sound. Click, click, click. Whir, titchk. Almost like speech played backward through broken glass. Almost like a language stripped of meaning and reassembled ROM. More answered from the trees behind them, chittering responses that echoed too precisely, as if the forest itself were mocking them. And suddenly the canopy moved. Branches shuddered, leaves rained down in golden cascades. The rustling revealed dozens, no, hundreds, of the creatures swarming through the treetops like a living tide. They didn't move naturally. They moved in glitchy, staccato bursts, freeze-frame stillness, then instant teleport-like shifts 3 branches over. Ricocheting from trunk to trunk at impossible angles, defying momentum, defying physics, defying the eye's ability to track them. Phaedra immediately stepped behind Yuki, one hand settling lightly on her shoulder. "They are not cute," she murmured. "They are pretending to be cute." Tramar grumbled, flames already kindling in his palms. "Everything here pretends. Even the dirt probably pretends." The firelight cast jittery shadows across his face, half defiant, half nervous. Several tricksters crept closer along the branches, tails flickering in excited loops like cats spotting prey. Then the pebbles started. The first one struck Tramar's shoulder with a sharp crack. He yelped and stumbled sideways. "Oh, W! What the—" Another pebble whistled past Yuki's ear, close enough that she felt the air split. She flinched hard. The stone hit the moss with a dull thud, then flickered, fading like smoke, as if it had never existed at all. Phaedra's staff blurred, swatting a pebble mid-flight with elegant, irritated precision. It dissolved on impact. "Illusions?" she asked, more annoyed than alarmed. "Comme c'est pénible?" "Some of them," Yuki squeaked, ducking as another grazed her sleeve. This one stayed, rolling to a stop at her feet. "Some are real. The tricksters blend them. They're—" The barrage intensified. Pebbles rained down in chaotic bursts. Some struck with bruising force, others passed through skin like ghosts, some exploded into golden sparks on contact. All of them thrown with playful, mocking precision that made it clear the creatures considered this entertainment. Tramar threw his arms over his head. "Stop throwing rocks at my face!" The entire swarm froze. For one absurd, breathless moment, every trickster went perfectly still, heads tilted in unison, glowing eyes wide with something almost like concern. Then they resumed. Harder. Phaedra let out a long, suffering exhale. Cowardly and rude. Wonderful. My favorite combination. A pebble bounced off her shoulder. She didn't even blink. Yuki stood frozen, caught between terror and fascination. The tricksters moved as if reality itself was buffering. Bodies fragmented into bursts of golden light, reforming 3 branches over, defying every law of motion she knew. Their tails twisted into impossible shapes, spirals, ribbons, split braids of condensed dawn that left shimmering after-images in the air. One leapt sideways. The motion was wrong. No arc, no weight, just instant displacement, like someone had cut a frame from the world and pasted it elsewhere. Yuki's historian brain screamed at her to take notes. Her survival instinct screamed louder. Fedra bent close, voice cutting through the chaos with calm authority. Yuki, ton prove, lead us. Yuki swallowed hard, trying to focus past the pebbles and the dizzying movements and the way the entire forest seemed to tilt every time the creatures jumped, as if their existence bent space itself. She opened her mouth. And a rock smacked Tramar squarely in the chest with a meaty thwack. He staggered back, face flushing scarlet. Oh, that's it! Fire erupted in his hands, bright and furious. He hurled a firebolt at the nearest trickster with all the restraint of a man whose patience had been murdered by tiny fox monkeys. It hit dead center. The creature burst, just a brilliant flare of golden sparks that bloomed like a dying star and vanished, leaving nothing but fading embers drifting through the canopy. Yuki gasped, eyes wide. That one was real. Tramar pumped his fist, grinning wildly. Good, great, which ones are real so I can… Thunk. A pebble drilled him directly between the eyes. Oh, W! The chittering laughter doubled, echoing through the trees in overlapping waves. Most of them aren't real, Yuki shouted over the chaos, voice cracking with urgency. Or they're partially real, or they flicker between states. Okay, I don't know, but most aren't. Fedre lifted her staff again, movements sharp and efficient now. Then how do we know which? Ah! A very real stone cracked against her shin with bone-jarring force. She hissed through her teeth, weight shifting instinctively. Murd, that one was real. Branches rustled overhead in a cascading wave. More tricksters emerged from the canopy's depths. Dozens becoming hundreds, their backward whisper giggles layering into something almost musical, almost mocking, almost gleeful. The forest shimmered. Sunlight bent strangely around the moving shapes, refracting through their translucent bodies like light through broken glass. Yuki clutched her sword, knuckles white, heart hammering with equal parts terror and exhilaration. Her mind raced, heart pounding against her ribs. The pebbles kept coming, some ghosting through her shoulder, others bruising her arms with painful thwacks. Fedra had to heal them as Yuki gritted her teeth. We have to fight through them, she shouted over the chaos. Tramar, start hitting the real ones. Finally. Tramar roared, relief and fury mixing in his voice. Someone said it. Fire erupted from his hands in rapid bursts. Firebolts streaked through the canopy like angry comets, slamming into tricksters left and right. F whoosh, miss. The creature flickered, reforming 3 branches over. Cack, hit. Golden sparks bloomed and faded. FW whoosh. Another miss. The firebolt passed straight through shimmering air. Co-won! Tramar bellowed, spinning to track the darting shapes. Fire poured from his palms faster now, desperation creeping into his movements. But for every real trickster he destroyed, a dozen illusions danced untouched through his barrage, their chittering laughter swelling into mocking crescendos. A pebble struck Yuki's temple. She stumbled, vision swimming. Another hit her ribs, knocking the breath from her lungs. Tramar took a stone to the knee and swore loudly. ARGH these little asses. Phaedra's voice cracked through the chaos. Golden light again flared from her staff, sweeping over them in a warm wave that stitched bruises and cuts with practiced precision. But her breathing hitched. Sweat traced down her temple, catching in the glow. Their attacks, she said tightly, twisting aside as a pebble shattered against the tree behind her, hit as hard as level 25 guards. Another stone slammed into her shoulder. She hissed, jaw tightening, but her staff stayed raised. Merde, I cannot keep this pace. Her eyes flicked between Yuki and Tramar. We need a strategy, pas de panique. Not this chaos. Tramar fired 3 more bolts in quick succession. 2 missed entirely. I'm tiring, they won't hold still. Yuki's mind spun frantically. Think, think. She was a light mage, illusions were her domain. There had to be something. Her eyes widened. Mirrors, she gasped. I can use mirrors. She thrust her hands forward, mana flowing outward in shimmering threads. Small reflective surfaces materialized in the surrounding air, palm-sized, angled like protective shields. A pebble struck one. The mirror shattered instantly, fragmenting into golden dust, but the stone stopped cold. Yes! Yuki's heart surged. Tramar'll cover you. Just crack, crack, crack. 3 more mirrors exploded under the barrage. Yuki gasped, recreating them as fast as she could, but the pebbles came faster. The tricksters chittered gleefully, 1,000 glowing eyes tracking every movement. Tramar fired through the gaps, hitting one real trickster, then missing 10 more. "Trees too many!" he shouted, frustration cracking his voice. "I can tell which." A pebble drilled into Yuki's back. She cried out, stumbling forward. Phaedra caught her with one hand, golden light flaring again. "Mon Dieu," Phaedra breathed, voice tight. "My mana, Yuki. I cannot hold this for too long." Yuki's vision blurred with pain and panic. The mirror wasn't enough. The illusions were everywhere. Thousands of them now, swarming through the canopy in dizzying waves. "Wait." Her breath caught as she stared at one of her mirrors, watching a trickster leap toward them. In the reflection, the creature wasn't there. Only an empty branch. Her heart slammed against her chest. "The illusions don't show in mirrors." Tramar whipped around. "What? Look!" Yuki thrust her hand forward, creating a mirror angle toward the canopy. "The real ones reflect. The illusions don't." Tramar's eyes went wide. He stepped close, squinting at the reflection. "Oh, you beautiful nerd," he shouted, grinning wildly. Okay, left side, middle branch," he fired. Whoosh. The firebolt sailed off to the right, completely missing. Yuki blinked. "Tramar, I got it. Whoosh. Another miss. Tramar, I am aiming at them. You have to flip it," Yuki shrieked. "It's mirrored, aim the other way." Behind them, despite everything, Phaedra burst into laughter. "Mon Dieu, Tramar, how do you even function?" "Okay now? Okay?" He adjusted his stance, face flushed with embarrassment and determination. "Left is right is left, I am a genius." He fired. Crack. Golden sparks burst from the canopy. A real trickster exploded into light. "Why, yes!" Tramar roared. "Again!" Yuki angled another mirror, panting hard, sweat dripping down her temple. Her mana reserves were draining, and she had to keep recreating them as pebbles shattered them one by one. "There," she pointed at the reflection. 2, no, 3 on the upper branch. Tramar fired in rapid succession, adjusting for the mirror's reversal. Crack, crack, crack. 3 tricksters burst into the light and vanished. But the strain was mounting. Yuki's hands trembled as she summoned another mirror. Her vision swam. "Phaedra status? Mana?" Phaedra's voice was breathless. Another golden pulse washed over them. 20 heals, maybe less. A pebble struck Yuki's shoulder. She gasped, nearly dropping the mirror. "Focus the mirror on me," Tramar shouted, stepping into position. "I'll clear the center." Yuki gritted her teeth, focusing on putting the mirror angled directly at the thickest cluster of movement. Tramar's eyes locked onto the reflection. His hands blazed with fire. "Come on, you little nightmares." He fired and fired and fired. Each bolt found its mark. Real tricksters exploded in bursts of golden light, their chittering screams fading into silence. The illusions flickered wildly, disoriented without their real counterparts anchoring them. Yuki's knees buckled. The mirror wavered, cracks spreading across its surface. "Yuki!" Phaedra caught her, one arm around her waist. "Stay with us!" "I'm okay," Yuki gasped, forcing her mana to hold the mirror. "Just a little longer." Tramar finished them. Tramar's jaw clenched, sweat streaming down his face. His mana reserves were bottoming out. She could see it in the way his firebolts flickered, smaller now, less stable. But he didn't stop. One more trickster. Then another. Then, the last real one leapt from the highest branch, tail blazing, eyes locked onto Yuki with predatory focus. Tramar saw it in the mirror, adjusted his aim, and the firebolt struck true. The trickster exploded in a brilliant flare of golden light, brighter than all the others, a final defiant burst that lit the entire canopy like a second sunrise. And then silence. The illusions shattered. Thousands of them, all at once, fragmented into glittering dust that drifted down like snow. The oppressive weight of their presence lifted, leaving only the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the labyrinth's magic. Yuki's mirror collapsed. She dropped to her knees, gasping for air, mana completely spent. Tramar fell backward onto the moss, arms spread wide, chest heaving. "I hate this place." Phaedra sank down gracefully beside them, staff resting across her lap, golden light finally fading from her hands. She was exhausted, but smiling faintly. "Eh bien," she murmured, voice soft with pride. "We survived." Yuki looked up at the now empty canopy, a tired, breathless grin spreading across her face. We did. Chapter 265, First Illusion. Book 4. For a long while, the only sounds were ragged breathing and wind threading through the strange, shimmering leaves. The aftermath of the tricksters hung around them like fading static. The forest itself felt as if it had been holding its breath during the battle and was only now exhaling. Moss cushioned Yuki as she flopped backwards, limbs trembling, lungs burning. She could still hear phantom pebbles whizzing through the air, could still feel the ghost shimmer of shattered illusions on her skin. Her heart thumped wildly. Fear, excitement, mana overload, all tangled together like a nest of sparklers. Tramar sprawled on his back nearby, arms splayed, his chest heaving. If one more magical monkey fox throws a pebble at me, he panted. I swear, I'm switching to ice magic. I don't care if it's the queen's domain or not. Phaedra stretched with the grace of a lounging cat, shaking out her hands as a faint gold faded from her palms. Mon Dieu, one of them actually bruised my shin. She stared down at the offended leg, as if expecting an apology. A tiny animal bruised me. I am personally offended. Yuki giggled helplessly, lying on the moss like it might anchor her mana from drifting off somewhere nervous and jittery. They were really cute, though Tramar rolled his head toward her, eyes wide with betrayal. Yuki, they tried to kill us with ROCX. Well, Yuki lifted her hands defensively, cheeks hot. They were doing it in a playful way? Playful is a kitten. That, he waved vaguely at the canopy, was psychological warfare. Phaedra leaned forward and tapped his forehead with her elegant nail. At least it forced you to learn how mirrors work, mon chéri. A miracle in itself. That was a low blow, he groaned. Phaedra smiled serenely. We, and well deserved. Yuki giggled again, unable to stop. She felt buoyant now that the adrenaline was dwindling, the air scented with crushed moss, warm bark, and the fading smell of Tramar's fire magic. The surrounding forest seemed calmer too, still unnatural, still shimmering like a place painted with light instead of pigment, but peaceful in a strange, enchanted way. Then everything shifted, not violently or abruptly, just subtly, as if someone gently turned the entire forest page by page into a new chapter. The surrounding trees rustled, branches bending aside in a synchronized sway. The canopy lifted, the haze parted. Shadows rearranged themselves like obedient dancers. A pathway formed. Yuki pushed herself upright slowly, breath catching. Guys, look. Phaedra stood, staff ready but held loosely at her side. Tramar groaned as he sat up, then froze mid-complaint. The trees continued to part until a clearing revealed itself. It wasn't like the rest of the forest. The light here was impossibly warm, like eternal golden hour, sunlight thick and honey-colored, painting everything in soft glows. The air shimmered gently, motes of gold drifting like lazy fireflies. The ground was smooth, lush moss interrupted only by tiny clusters of silvery flowers. But the center, Yuki stopped breathing. In the middle of the clearing stood a fox, sun fox, Echo Levi. A magical echo, built of overlapping light and faint swirling runes that pulsed. It was majestic, tall as her waist, slender, luminous, tail fanned out in multiple ethereal strands that drifted behind it like ribbons caught in a dream. Its eyes glowed with warm dawn light. Amber shot through with gold, deep and ancient as the first sunrise. Yuki made a sound that could only be described as a very tiny internal explosion. Oh my gods, it's. Tramar blinked. Is that the fox? The fox, Phaedra smiled. I believe so, Sherry. Yuki bounced to her feet with zero dignity, nearly tripping over her own boots. She clasped her hands under her chin, light practically leaking out of her face. It's beautiful. I'll give you that, Tramar admitted grudgingly, still rubbing the spot where a very real rock had hit him. Majestic, glowy, definitely worth not dying. Yuki inched forward, every part of her vibrating like an overcharged mana crystal. This is the spirit echo. The historical book said the sun fox could imprint parts of itself into trials and look at it. The fox tilted its head slightly, ears shimmering like fine gold thread. Yuki squeaked. Phaedra laughed softly, stepping up beside her. Mon conneur, breathe. I can't, Yuki whispered. The fox took a single step toward them. The moss glowed under its paws. Yuki stood frozen between awe and giddy joy, hands pressed to her chest as if her heart might leap out and sprint toward the creature on its own. The fox lifted its luminous gaze to her. Yuki whispered, barely audible, breath trembling, "Hi!" The golden fox tilted its head at Yuki's whisper, ears flicking as if savoring the sound. Its form rippled, light folding over itself in layered ribbons, runes spiraling gently through its body like drifting constellations. Then it opened its mouth and spoke. Its voice was soft, warm, carrying the cadence of wind brushing through tall grass. Playful, but threaded with something impossibly old, like laughter heard at the beginning of time. "Little lantern," it purred, eyes narrowing with affectionate mischief. "Your greeting arrives brighter than the sun you carry." Yuki made a small, dying squeak noise. Tramar slapped a hand over her mouth on instinct. The fox's gaze swept over all three of them, tail ribbons drifting behind it like illuminated breaths. "You walked through the veil. You bent your sight against what wished to trick it. You survived the jest of my children." It paused, smile curling like a shifting aurora. "It's a shame they threw stones. They are fond of pranks, less fond of restraint." Yuki's muffled squeak intensified. Phaedra dipped her head, a gesture somewhere between courtesy and charm. "Your guardians greeted us with vehemence." The fox chuffed, a sound halfway between a laugh and a warm breeze scattering petals. "Their joy is uncomplicated," it said. "Your path ahead is not." The clearing seemed to tighten, light pooling around the fox like a spotlight cast by the sky itself. "You will face tests," it continued, "not of flame or blade. Your strength is no currency here." Its eyes met Tramar's. He straightened immediately. "Your cunning, your perception, your truth, these are the keys you must wield." The fox stepped lightly across the moss, paws leaving faint golden prints that vanished seconds later. Not every illusion hides, not every truth is revealed, not every path leads forward. Some wind, a pause, and some remember. The fox's playful tone deepened, still warm but edged with gravity. "Can you see past what deceives you?" Its gaze fell on Yuki. "Can you see what wishes to be seen? Second trial, fact or illusion, misted, objective. The sun fox will present 3 visions from the past. Only one is true. The others are illusions. Identify the truth. Then answer the fox's question about yourself with complete honesty." Yuki froze. Because she wanted to say yes. Her whole magic, her whole heart, was built on light and distortion, on understanding how it bent, how it glimmered, how it hid. But this ancient being, felt like staring into a sunrise that held secrets older than any book she had read. Was she ready? Her mouth opened and nothing came out. "It is no shame to hesitate," the fox murmured. "The first step is always a trembling one." Tramar cleared his throat loudly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, but, if none of us, wants to be the coward." Phaedra arched a brow. "Tramar." He lifted both hands. "Hey, I'm just saying, we all nearly died to monkey foxes chucking rocks at us. Maybe let the bravest guy go first." Yuki blinked at him. "You mean the person who screamed the loudest when they threw pebbles?" "I was surprised," Tramar snapped. The fox laughed, a shimmering, musical ripple that vibrated through the trees. "Bravery is not the absence of fear," it mused. "It is the choice to move despite it." Its golden eyes gleamed. "So which of you steps forward first?" Silence. Yuki bit her lip. She wanted to go, but her heart was fluttering too fast, and her hands were shaking slightly, and she wasn't sure if this was the test you leap into blindly or think about deeply. Phaedra considered stepping forward, then thought better of it, her gaze sliding toward Yuki, as if expecting her to choose, then sliding away again. Nobody moved, until Tramar inhaled, rolled back his shoulders, and forced a wide, overly confident grin. "All right," he declared. "I'll be the man. I'll go first." Yuki blinked. Phaedra blinked. Tramar stepped forward, planting his boots firmly on the moss. "Hit me with your best illusion test, fox guy." The fox's tails rose behind it in a slow, swirling fan, light drifting like golden smoke. "Very well," it purred, ancient amusement curling around the words. "Let us begin." The golden fox's eyes glimmered, the clearing darkened, and the world around them shifted like fabric pulled through water, folding inward, stretching outward, reshaping itself until the forest dissolved into a memory. None of them owned, yet all of them could see. Light faded, sound thinned, warmth drained, and then they were standing in a shadowed den at the edge of a forgotten valley, the air thick with pine sap and cold earth, the ground uneven beneath their feet, even though they knew, somewhere, deep down, that none of this could actually touch them. A small fox cub stood before them, and they felt its emotions. Barely larger than Yuki's satchel, its fur pale gold, its ribs faintly visible beneath the soft light of its body. The little creature trembled so violently, its paws scraped tiny furrows into the dirt. Each breath a sharp, terrified gasp that seemed to echo far too loudly in the cramped space. Its ears were pinned flat, tail curled beneath its belly, eyes wide and shimmering with wet, terrified light. Yuki felt her throat tighten painfully. "Oh, no!" Fedre touched her arm, voice quiet. "Remember, it is illusion, mon connaît." But it didn't feel like an illusion, and Yuki felt the fear as if it were her own. The air smelled of fear, tinged with the desperate musk of an animal pushed to its limit. The cub's tiny body jerked with every breath, like each inhale was a battle it wasn't sure it would win. Tramar took a step back, face paling. "I don't like this." Yuki turned toward him, startled by the rawness in his voice. His hands were trembling. The predators emerged then, magical wolves, if wolves could be carved from midnight fog and sharpened moonlight. Their bodies were lean and jagged, paws silent on the stony ground, eyes gleaming with predatory hunger and cruel intelligence. They circled the cub slowly, methodically, like seasoned hunters savoring the moment before the kill. One of them let out a low, growling rumble that felt almost amused. "Little spirit," a distorted voice rasped, somehow both growl and speech, echoing in tones layered over one another as if two creatures spoke at once. All alone, another wolf moved closer, jaws parting in a twisted grin. No guardian, no light, no power. The fox cub collapsed against the den wall, claws scraping helplessly against stone. Its breath came in panicked gasps, throat tight with choked whimpers. And Tramar's knees nearly buckled. He clutched at his chest, fingers curled as though trying to hold his own heartbeat in place. His eyes were wide, unfocused, breath fast. "Tramar?" Yuki whispered, reaching for him instinctively. He swallowed hard, jaw clenched, voice barely there, rasp. "I know this feeling. I've been here." Not literally, just this kind of fear. The being cornered, the knowing no one's coming, His voice broke, the panic so loud you can't think. The wolves crept closer. The cub shut its eyes tight. Its tiny body trembled with such intensity that even Yuki felt her own breath shake in response. It pressed itself deeper into the corner, searching for a way out that didn't exist, a miracle that hadn't yet been born. The wolves moved in for the kill, and then, in a single wild burst of desperation, the cub snapped its eyes open. Its pupils flared gold. Mana sparked through its body in a flicker so faint it could have been a trick of the shifting light. But then the spark grew, unstable, terrified, and leapt into the air beside it. The magic swirled, clumped, collapsed, and then reformed into a trembling, clumsy copy of the cub. Its outline flickered. Its paws were mismatched. The light of its body stuttered in uneven pulses, like a candle burning in gusts of fear. Anyone, truly anyone, could have seen it wasn't real. But desperation is a powerful source of magic, and fear can make even the weakest illusion matter. The wolves hesitated, just for a second, just long enough. The illusion wavered like a soap bubble about to burst, and yet, that single moment of confusion, that single misplaced step of the predators, was enough for the cub to bolt between them, claws scraping, legs shaking, tail streaking behind it like a fading ribbon of dawn. The wolf snarled, lunging too late. The cub sprinted, half stumbling, half gliding, through brambles and shadow, crashing through a narrow gap in the rocks and tumbling into an open patch of forest on the other side. It collapsed immediately, chest heaving, tiny body curled in on itself as if trying to hold its heart still. Its breath was thin, trembling as if it might shatter. Its entire body shook with leftover terror. But it was alive. It had survived. And in that shaking, terrified breath, Lying there in the darkness, alone but free, the fox took its first step on the path of illusion. They all felt the magic underneath it. The clearing returned slowly, like waking from a dream that refused to let go. The golden light felt too bright after the shadows of the den, the warmth too present after that bone-deep cold. Yuki pressed both hands to her chest, feeling her heart echo the cub's panic, her own breath trembling in empathy. Phaedra exhaled slowly, eyes softened with something almost maternal. Poor little thing. Tramar wiped his eyes with his sleeve, slightly turning away, and muttered, "Damn it, that was too real." The sun fox's luminous gaze settled on him, all playfulness stripped away into something quieter. "Fire child," it said, voice like warm embers cooling in the night. "You felt it, didn't you?" Tramar's throat worked. He didn't answer. The fox stepped closer, each paw print blooming gold on the moss before fading. The trembling, the cornered desperation. When all your noise cannot protect you. Yuki watched Tramar's face, saw something crack behind his eyes, something unguarded that he usually buried under that ridiculous glowing hat. The fox's tails drifted like ribbons of captured dawn. Its voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and inescapable. "When did you learn that being loud kept you from being seen?" Silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Tramar's hands curled into fists, his jaw clenched. The fox watched him with patience, as if it had all the time in the world, as if this moment was just another second in an existence that had seen countless dawns. "You may choose not to answer," it breathed. "But know this, the trial continues. The question remains." And silence. The fox's eyes gleamed. "Caw. Silence is also a truth." It turned, tail swirling, and its gaze swept across all three of them. Who steps forward next? Chapter 266. Not perfect enough. Book 4. Phaedra watched Tramar step back from the fox, still breathing a little too fast, his hands flexing as if the echo of those wolf's teeth lingered in his skin. Yuki hovered close, eyes wide, light clinging to her like an anxious aura. The clearing felt tighter after his trial. The eternal light of the golden hour cast longer shadows, as if the labyrinth itself was leaning in to see what they'd do next. The fox turned its gaze to Phaedra. Those dawn-lit eyes were not cruel, but they were not soft either. They saw too much and judged too quietly. Light moved through its body like slow fire through glass. When it inclined its head toward her, the message was obvious. "Your turn." Phaedra drew a breath through her nose, squared her shoulders, and smiled with a poise that gang leaders and very stubborn stakeholders. "Très bien," she said, as if they were discussing wine instead of trauma. "I will go next." Yuki glanced at her, concerned. "Are you sure?" "We could, I am sure," Phaedra said, resting a hand for a second on Yuki's arm. "Someone must. None. Might as well be the one with the best hair." That got the tiniest laugh out of Yuki, which was the point. The fox's tail unfolded behind it, drifting like slow banners of light, and the air in front of her wavered. Tramar muttered something about round 2 of emotional damage under his breath, but his voice was already distant. The golden clearing blurred at the edges, light smearing into a soft haze. Phaedra didn't move. She knew better than to reach for anything inside a trial like this. Hands at her sides, spine straight, chin lifted, she let the world tilt. The clearing dissolved. Sunlight returned in a different form. She stood at the edge of another glade, this one smaller, dappled with soft beams filtering through a high canopy of leaves. The colors were gentler here, warm greens, faded golds, the sort of filtered light that made every surface look touched by memory. In the center of the clearing, the sun fox lay stretched on a patch of moss, smaller than the echo they'd met. Younger somehow, fur richer, more solid, as if less of it had been carved out by time. Its tails fanned around it like spilled threads of dawn. Beside it, a tiny cub bounced clumsily on overlarge paws. The baby's fur was paler, fluffier, its movements too big for its body. It darted in short, frantic bursts, overshooting its marks, tumbling over itself and scrambling back up with stubborn determination. Light flickered off its coat in little bursts, like mana sparks that didn't yet know where to go. Phaedra went still. The temptation to step forward was instinctive. Small, unsteady things triggered something soft and protective in her ribs. But when she shifted her weight, the grass beneath her boots didn't bend, didn't rustle. Her dress didn't snag on branches. She watched one lazy beam of sunlight pass right through her hand when she lifted it. Illusion, vision, Memory, pas être pour toi, ma belle. Just watch. So she did. The cub crouched, eyes narrowed in fierce concentration. The surrounding air shimmered faintly, mana coalescing like thin mist. For a moment, a second miniature cub appeared beside it. Same paws, same tufted ears, same bright eyes. It wobbled, it flickered, it sputtered and popped like a soap bubble after a single heartbeat. The cub squeaked in frustration, tiny claws digging at the dirt, ears flattening. It stomped in a little circle, tail fluffed out in indignation. The older fox lifted its head, watching with an attention that was neither indulgent nor impatient. It rose and padded closer, its movements so smooth the moss barely depressed under its weight. Its muzzle brushed the cub's back, a gentle nudge, and it let out a soft woof that sounded suspiciously like encouragement. The cub tried again. Mana shimmered. The second image appeared, this time with the ears too big and the tail too short, and the outline blinked in and out of existence. The fox's luminous eyes softened, and it nudged the illusion with its nose. Its muzzle passed through. The cub squeaked again, this time in embarrassed outrage. Phaedra felt her lips curve despite herself. There was a familiarity to it. Someone trying too hard, demanding the world acknowledge their effort even when the result wobbled and fell apart. The older fox sat beside the cub, leaning in to groom its ears with deliberate, unhurried licks. The cub tolerated this for exactly 3 seconds before squirming, pushing back against the bigger body, then shoving its head under the fox's jaw. They curled together instinctively. No narration explained what they were to each other. It didn't need to. The bond lived entirely in the way the cub pressed against the fox's chest, in the way the fox's tails wrapped protectively around it, in the quiet sound the older one made. Something between a hum and a sigh. Soothing noise Phaedra had heard mothers make on trains and in waiting rooms, and once, a long time ago, in a cheap flat when Shed thought no one was listening. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. She did not notice. The cub disentangled itself and backed up a few paces, eyes gleaming with mischief now. It glanced at the fox, then at the moss in front of them, then back again. The air shimmered. A tiny version of the older fox appeared at the fox's left, ears askew, tail lopsided, one paw missing entirely. Phaedra almost laughed out loud. The illusion flickered, stabilized, flickered again. You would have to be blind not to see it was wrong. A rush sketch instead of a painting. But the cub's face lit up, proud and hopeful. The older fox stared at its warped doppelganger. Then it laughed. Not in words, not in any human way. Its shoulders shook with silent mirth, its eyes half-lidded in warmth, tails rippling with amused delight. It dipped its head, nuzzling the cub, letting its throat rumble with affection. The cub puffed itself up, delighted by the reaction, then, having clearly decided this was now a pranking situation, shifted the illusion so the tiny fake fox toppled over dramatically, legs flailing. The older fox laughed harder. Phaedra's chest ached. You ridiculous creature, she thought, though she wasn't sure if she meant the cub, the adult, or herself for reacting this way. You love this little one. You are doomed. The scene shifted without warning. Voices threaded through the trees, approaching from somewhere out of sight. Told you following the residual flare was worth it. Do you feel that? That's pure solar essence. A second voice, more practical, less awed. Either would work, but the cub's is purer, less entangled, easier to refine. The fox's body language changed in an instant. Playfulness vanished. Muscles tensed. Ears pricked forward, then flattened, and its tail spread out behind it like a mantle, wider, taller, bigger. Its head snapped toward the sound, and in that moment Phaedra saw every guardian instinct Shed just watched in quiet, domestic form sharpen into something brutally focused. She knew this transition. Lovers hardening into strangers in the moment before a breakup. Her own face in a mirror when the door clicked and heavy footsteps approached. The fox bumped the cub with its head, firmer this time, nudging it behind its hind legs. Another voice drifted between the trunks, casual, businesslike. Do you have any idea what sun powder is fetching in Altendai right now? 500 gold per ounce, more if it's fresh. Then we take them both, a third voice answered. The big one for bulk. The little one for precision work. The cub shivered. The fox's tail dropped protectively over it, a curtain of light and fur. Its head turned in tiny increments, measuring distances, weighing escape lines. Phaedra's breathing slowed. Her eyes did not leave the fox. Run, she thought at it uselessly. Take the little one and run. The fox did exactly that. It moved in one smooth, gliding motion, scooping the cub with its muzzle and pushing it toward the opposite side of the clearing, away from the voices. Every step was silent. Even its breathing seemed to disappear into the air. For a moment, it looked as if they would slip away like mist. Then the world slammed shut. Light flared ahead of them, a flat, shimmering wall of solid brilliance materializing between the trees. It stretched from ground to canopy, humming with magecraft. The surrounding air warped, as if the fabric of reality was being held in a tight grip. The fox skidded to a halt, claws scoring the earth, the cub bumping into its legs with a frightened squeak. Behind them, the voices laughed. "You were right," someone said. "They bolted as soon as they heard us." "Spirits are predictable when they care about something," another replied. Footsteps crunched closer through underbrush that did not really exist. "Spread out. Don't let the big one get a line of sight beyond the trees." Hunters emerged from between the trunks in a widening circle, armor muted, cloaks dull against the forest, weapons glinting with restrained enchantment. One of them, a mage, stood just behind the light wall, hands outstretched, eyes glowing faintly with the strain of maintaining the barrier. The cub's illusory bravery vanished. It pressed itself against the fox, small body shaking, tiny claws digging into the moss. The fox bared its teeth. A sound tore from its throat, low and savage, a warning that vibrated in Phaedra's bones despite not being real. Its tail spread wider, haloing it in dawn fire. Mana pooled thickly in the air, the very light in the clearing bending toward the fox in expectation, like an orchestra pausing before the conductor's hands drop. The first illusions came as a storm. They didn't flicker. They didn't wobble. 3, 4, 5 copies of the fox burst into existence around it, each one moving with the same precise grace, each one radiating the same golden power. Each tail, each ear, each whisker rendered in flawless detail. They paced in a wide circle, snarling in unison, light refracting off their bodies at slightly different angles that made it almost impossible to tell which way the real one would strike. Phaedra's breath caught. She could not help the admiring thought that rose, "Mon Dieu, magnifique! If I could cast like that!" The hunters faltered. Several stepped back, eyes darting between the foxes, weapons shifting hesitantly. One swung his bow in a slow arc, trying to track movement and failing. The foxes overlapped, blurred, split, recombined. The entire clearing became a swirling dance of golden fur and snapping jaws. It seemed like it might work. The fox grabbed the cub by the scruff, real body lost somewhere among its own illusions, and pushed forward, threading the child through a seam in the confusion, aiming for a gap between two nervous hunters. Phaedra leaned into the illusion as if she could lend momentum with sheer will. Go, Petit Soleil. You can slip past them. They are clumsy and greedy, and you are made of light." "Wait," one hunter shouted. "It's weaving them. Look, this pattern." Another hunter stepped forward, tugging a crystalline device from his belt. A lens. Sunglass, cut thin and set in a brass frame. He lifted it to his eye. The crystal caught the ambient light and refracted it, bending the glow at unnatural angles. Phaedra watched, helpless, as he scanned the clearing through it. There. He pointed directly at a spot where 4 foxes overlapped, layered illusions of tails and teeth. "That one. The others are bending wrong. See the refraction?" The mage at the barrier raised one hand, whispered a word that felt like cold water poured on hot metal, and cast Dispel. The illusions shattered. Not gently. They broke like mirrors hit with a hammer, fragments of golden foxes splintering outward in jagged shards of light that dissolved before they touched anything. The real fox jerked as the magic stripped its work away, bare and singular again, exposed in the center of a circle of hunters. Phaedra's heart plunged. The feeling was uncomfortably familiar. Preparation beats skill. Every time. The thought surfaced bitter, edged by memories of carefully built plans undone in a single meeting, of brilliant improvisations smothered by someone who simply had more resources, more time, more everything. The fox reacted instantly, hurling up another wave of illusions, this time barriers of light instead of copies of itself. Walls of glow sprang up between trees, blocking lines of fire, redirecting sight. It layered them with frantic speed, stacking complexity on complexity, trying to overwhelm the dispelling mage by sheer volume. The hunter with the lens just smiled grimly. Persistent. Overcharged, the mage snapped. We planned for this. Another dispel. Stronger, heavier. It hit the illusions like a tidal wave of logic, wiping away artistry. Walls cracked, foxes flickered and died. Light bled out of the air, leaving the clearing frighteningly plain for a moment. The cub cried. A high sound, closer to a sob than an animal call, tore through the illusion and lodged under Phaedra's ribs. Her hands clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. Only then did she realize they were shaking. A hunter surged forward through the fading light, faster than the fox could reweave its defenses. His hands shot out, closing around the cub's scruff. The baby yelped, legs scrabbling, small body arching in panic. The fox snapped, and mana roared out of it in a flood. The fox poured everything into one last illusion, and the world detonated in white. The clearing vanished. There was only light, blinding, absolute, an all-consuming burst that erased edges, erased shadows, erased the hunters, erased the trees, even erased the cub's outline. For one suspended second, there was no difference between illusion and reality. Light became the only truth. Phaedra's breath caught in her throat, chest squeezing as if someone had reached in and gripped her heart directly. Yes, yes, that will do it. That is enough. That. Then the light fractured. An arrow flew. She didn't see where it came from. She only saw where it landed. It pierced the fox's side, just behind the shoulder, a dark streak cutting through gold. Blood blossomed in a sudden burst, too vivid against the luminous fur. The fox's legs buckled. Its body hit the ground with a sound she didn't truly hear, but her imagination supplied anyway. The illusion light dimmed. The hunters were still there. The cub was still caught. The fox tried to get up. It failed. Muscles trembled beneath slick fur. Claws dug into the dirt, back legs kicking once, twice, refusing to obey. It dragged itself forward with its forelegs, leaving the streak of gold and red smeared across the moss as it reached for the tree line, for anything that might offer cover. It made it to the base of a tree and stopped, sides heaving. Breath wheezed in and out, each inhale wet. Its eyes never left the cub. Phaedra's face had gone still, every muscle arranged into the calm neutrality she wore when she didn't dare show what she felt. Her eyes, however, betrayed her. They shone too brightly in the golden hour light, a single tear sliding down without permission, catching on her lower lashes before it fell. The cub fought, thrashing in the hunter's grip, tiny legs kicking, mouth open in a soundless scream. The trial didn't bother to render audio anymore. Its eyes locked onto the fox, raw with terror and betrayal and confusion it didn't have words for. It called. The fox gathered what little was left of its magic and tried to weave one more illusion. Just one. A tiny flare of light sputtered in the air between it and the cub, the suggestion of a path, a bridge, something that might connect them. It flickered, trembled, collapsed in on itself. Too weak. The hunters tightened their circle, satisfied now. The one holding the lens tucked it away. The mage let the barrier wall fade, his work done. They turned and walked, carrying the struggling cub, its cries fading into the distance like a thread being pulled through cloth. The fox did not move. It watched. That was the worst part, Phaedra realized. The enforced witness, the inability to look away, the way the trial forced her to stand there as the spirit that had once laughed in a sun-dappled clearing, could do nothing but bleed and stare, and listen to the sound of its child being taken. The forest quieted. The golden light dimmed back to its eternal soft level. The hunter's footsteps vanished. The cub's cries dissolved into silence. Only the fox and the tree remained. The fox's head finally dropped to the moss, body still shuddering with shallow, stubborn breaths. Phaedra's nails dug crescent moons into her palms. Her breathing was utterly controlled, each inhale and exhale measured and even, the way she taught herself to do when panic served no one and composure was the only shield available. Her shoulders didn't shake. Her mouth didn't tremble. But her eyes glistened, and that single tear tracked a slow, cooling line down her cheek as she watched the sun fox alone with its failure. Then the vision shattered. The clearing snapped back into existence, the echo fox standing before her in its composed, luminous form, the illusion gone, the wound invisible. But Phaedra still felt it, like a phantom pain in her own side. She exhaled slowly. Voir, she murmured, voice hoarse in a way she hadn't expected. That was enlightening. Her hands finally relaxed, her palms stung. The echo fox regarded her in a long, unbroken silence. When it finally spoke, its voice carried none of the playful curl it had used before. When, it asked, did you learn that being perfect would not keep them safe? Phaedra's smile arrived automatically, polished and exquisite, the same one she'd worn at school meetings, in sterile rooms that smelled of antiseptic and dread. Perfect? She echoed with effortless poise, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeve. I do what I do très bien. It has always worked. Her breath eased out, and she turned her head toward Yuki. Yuki's face was flushed with emotion, eyes wide and shimmering, nervous fingers twisting in front of her, as if unsure whether to reach for Phaedra or leave her space. When their gazes met, Yuki's voice caught in her throat. Phaedra, are you okay? Phaedra tilted her head, something warm cutting through the fatigue that pressed behind her ribs. Yuki's concern brushed against her with a softness she had not expected to feel so acutely. She looked back at the fox. Yuki did not need to see whatever the fox would show her, not after watching both of them crack open. Better to risk being wrong than to watch that light dim. Her lips curved, slow and feline-like, a grin blooming like a sunrise with teeth. Stop, she said, voice low but certain. This is the correct one. Wait. Phaedra, are you sure? Yuki rushed forward a step, the words tumbling out in a panic that hit her own ears too late. You don't have to guess yet. What if that wasn't? Phaedra glanced down at her, the smile softening into something kinder, warmer, touched by affection she didn't bother hiding. Trust me, ma belle. Yuki froze, bit her lip. Tremar, still pale from his own trial but steady again, grinned at Phaedra in that crooked, unapologetically proud way of his. Yeah, he muttered, crossing his arms. That one felt real. Phaedra gave him a subtle incline of her chin, acknowledgement between survivors. The echo fox lifted its head. Your answer matters, it said softly, not to me, to what waits ahead. A pause. The golden eyes held steady. The labyrinth listens. It remembers. And the last trial. The fox's voice dropped to a whisper. Will be kinder to those who spoke the truth, and much less kind to those who hid. The fox vanished. Chapter 267. Amateur. Book 4. Back to Yuki. The golden clearing returned around them with a soft, rippling shudder, like a curtain of light falling back into place. Phaedra stood exactly where she had been, her posture flawless, her breathing controlled, her expression composed, too composed, Yuki thought helplessly, too calm for what she had just witnessed. The echo fox watched them all, still and patient. But Yuki only saw Phaedra. Her stomach knotted, her lips parted as the realization clicked into place. You. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, thin as thread. You didn't let me go. Phaedra turned her head slightly, eyes soft but unwavering. None. I did not. Yuki felt her throat tighten around something embarrassing. I could have done it, she insisted, crossing her arms hard enough that her shoulders ached. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. She pivoted away, chin up in a defiant little tilt that fooled absolutely no one. Her cheeks burned, her chest burned harder, inside her mind the truth churned. But I was scared. I didn't want to see it. I'm glad she stopped it because I didn't want to know what the fox would show me. But I can't tell them that. They already think I'm the weak one. The support, the utility, the one you shield first. Phaedra didn't rush after her. She didn't apologize or placate. Instead, she spoke in that maddeningly calm, matter-of-fact tone that somehow always sliced straight to the softest part of Yuki's heart. I know you could have, mon Kuno, she whispered, but watching you break when I could prevent it? That was not a price I was willing to pay. Yuki's breath hitched. So you thought I would break? Phaedra didn't answer in words. She just gave Yuki a look that said, I saw your hand shaking. You don't have to prove everything you feel, and I would rather you hate me than hurt yourself. Yuki's heartbeat tangled into a mess. Tremar stepped in quickly, awkward but clearly trying to help. Look, Yuki, you're our light mage, our brain. We need you at your best for whatever's next. He gestured vaguely to the forest. If you went all emotional trauma like I did, we'd be screwed. Yuki swallowed. So I'm the weak link. No! Tremar threw his arms out, disturbed. You're the I important link. The one that makes the rest of us function. The one who knows stuff. The one we can't lose. Yuki hugged herself tighter. Her hands were shaking. She tucked them under her crossed arms so no one would see. Her mind vacillated between relief and resentment, spiraling in frustrated loops. She wanted to be angry. She wanted not to care. She didn't even know what she wanted. So she settled into a pout and glared at the ground instead. Silence hung over them like damp fabric. Then the fox spoke. Its voice held no trace of the earlier playful warmth. The last trial awaits. The clearing dimmed, shadows lengthened, golden glimmers curled around roots and stones. Yuki's breath steadied despite herself. Instinct overpowered emotion. The historian in her, the scholar, the lover of ancient mysteries, snapped awake at the tone alone. What is it?" she whispered. The fox's eyes lingered on her. "You will face," it said softly, "what destroyed me, what took everything I tried to protect." Yuki felt her pulse stop for a beat. The Grand Master?" she whispered. The fox dipped its head, a slow, solemn acknowledgement. "Protect me," it murmured, "as I could not protect mine." Golden light rippled outward from its body, and with each pulse it seemed to shrink, its tails drawing in, its form dimming slightly, shifting from majestic echo to something smaller. Yuki took a slow breath, eyes burning. Light fractured in the center of the clearing, not shattered, fractured, like a stained glass window illuminated from the wrong side. Shards of brilliance folded inward, forming a silhouette, tall, commanding, unmistakably human. Robes coalesced first, sweeping white, embroidered in geometric sigils, Yuki recognized from old manuscripts and temple murals. Then came the mantle of light, draped over his shoulders like a second spine. Then the staff, silver and gold, resting in his hand with the casual confidence of someone who had no equal. Finally, his face carved itself from the radiance, elegant and detached in the way all terrifying geniuses seem to be. Yuki's heart dropped into her stomach. "That's," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and dread. "Oh no, that's him," she swallowed. "White Grandmaster, he killed so many spirits, his light magic was the best in." "Yuki," Tramar elbowed her subtly. "Please tell me he's not as scary as you're making him sound." Yuki gave him a side glance as she whispered, "He's worse. White Grandmaster Levi. 30, type, 7 legendary HP, 2102." Tramar swore softly. Phaedra's grip tightened on her staff. The Grandmaster's projection surveyed the clearing with cool curiosity, like a scholar examining a mildly interesting specimen. His gaze slid over Tramar, then Phaedra, then paused on Yuki, head tilting slightly. "Curious," he mused. "Why do you aid enemies of Altandai?" His tone wasn't cruel. If anything, it was puzzled, almost amused. He lifted an eyebrow. "You three." His voice carried the calm authority of someone who had never met a challenge he could not solve. "Allies of this creature," Yuki stammered, hands fluttering helplessly. "We're not. I mean, we are, but not like, we're protecting it, but it's complicated." The Grandmaster raised one hand, silencing her effortlessly. "Unwilling allies," he remarked dryly. "How quaint. Just look at you." He stepped forward, evaluating them with slow, piercing strokes. To Tramar, fire mage, amateur. Tramar made an annoyed choking noise. To Phaedra, healer, more looks than skill. Phaedra's eye gave the slightest twitch, just one. To Yuki, light mage, unrefined. Yuki turned the color of a cherry blossom mid-blush. The Grandmaster smiled, not unkindly, but with the absolute certainty of someone who had never needed to doubt himself. "Very well," he said. "Let me teach you why spirits kneel to humans." Instinctively, all three moved closer together. Tramar stepping half a pace back. Yuki gripping her sword so tightly her knuckles whitened and stepping forward. Phaedra raising her staff with elegance, her expression smoothing into its most dangerous calm. Yuki's throat tightened. "This is it." The Grandmaster did not move at first. He didn't posture, didn't draw power dramatically, didn't announce an opening lesson. He simply lifted 2 fingers. A thin lance of light snapped through the clearing with the elegance of a brushstroke and the precision of a scalpel. Yuki reacted on instinct. Mirrors blooming into existence with crystalline pops, 3 shields angled carefully, meant to redirect the beam. It hit the first mirror and shattered it instantly. the fragments dissolving before they even touched the moss. The second mirror lasted even shorter. The third imploded with a shriek of bending light. Yuki gasped, stumbling backward as mana recoiled through her palms. It's not even trying. That was nothing for him. The Grandmaster barely looked at her. Tramar, furious at how casually the man ignored them, snapped his hands outward and hurled a volley of firebolts. 3 rapid shots, each hot enough to scorch bark into ash. The Grandmaster extended one finger again. 1. A translucent shield flickered into existence, softer than glass, more like a ripple in water, and the firebolts curved around it like they'd been politely redirected. Not even extinguished. Just gently dismissed. Tramar sputtered. Are you kidding me? Phaedra was already casting, light coiling up her staff spirals, her expression drawn tight with focus. This will not be simple, she murmured. Preparez-vous. The Grandmaster drifted forward, robes whispering against a breeze that didn't exist. Your form is adequate, healer, he observed with professorial detachment. But predictable. He passed Yuki. She tried again. This time her almost never used skill. Whip of concentrated light, a slicing ribbon meant to crack through the shield's edges. It struck his barrier and passed through it like water, losing coherence the moment it touched the curved surface. The Grandmaster didn't bother facing her when he spoke. Light mage, you create mirrors, so tell me, why not simply bend light around them? He lifted his hand, and the surrounding light mirrored form obeyed, curving and ignoring all geometry she attempted to impose. Her magic unraveled like thread pulled from a torn seam. Yuki's stomach lurched. He's rewriting my spells mid-cast, hes too far ahead. I can't, her breath hitched. I'm too weak for this. Tramar, refusing to be ignored, roared and launched into motion. Firebolt, another, his hands a blur, the air cracking with heat. He didn't fling them wildly, he created a pattern, a staggered rhythm, trying to force the Grandmaster into a corner with sheer volume. For a moment it almost looked coordinated, impressive, dangerous. The Grandmaster watched quietly, amused. Interesting, you're attempting to overwhelm me with volume. He paused. It won't work. A pulse of light radiated from him, just a small one, like a lazy exhale, and every firebolt scattered, redirected into harmless arcs that scorched only the moss. Then his gaze settled fully on Tramar. You, fire mage, come here. Tramar's entire body snapped rigid. Good where I am, thanks. The Grandmaster sighed like a disappointed teacher and flicked his wrist. A ribbon of light wrapped around Tramar and yanked him forward, not violently, just effortlessly, as if pulling a curtain. Tramar staggered. The Grandmaster tilted his head, examining him as if assessing a poorly written essay. Your runes are sloppy, he said. Tramar's hands curled into fists. Sloppy? The Grandmaster's lips quirked. Do they? Or do you merely shout louder until something catches fire? Tramar's face flushed red. Shut up. Ah. The Grandmaster's voice softened, not kindly, but knowingly. I see. You were the one others mocked, weren't you? Tramar froze. Yuki felt something inside her twist. His shoulders hunched. His eyes dropped. His hands began to shake, just a tremor at first, then a noticeable tremble, as if each finger had its own pulse. Stop it, he whispered. Stop talking. Always the one who struggled a step behind the others. The Grandmaster continued gently, like dissecting a wound. Even now, even here, shut up. Always loud, the Grandmaster said, because silence meant truth. Tramar tried to form a rune, something simple, a flare. His fingers stuttered. The rune pattern collapsed. Mana fizzled at his fingertips and died. Yuki lunged forward. Tramar? But he didn't hear her. He was breathing too fast, eyes too wide, the world closing in on him the same way the illusion had fear swallowing focus. I said, Stop! He shouted, forcing another rune, but it fell apart immediately. Grandmaster watched. It seems you were never taught properly. Not resilience, not magic, not anything. Shut up! Tramar roared, but the sound cracked on the last syllable. Yuki threw up a wall of mirrors between them, voice trembling with anger. Leave him alone! The Grandmaster looked genuinely curious. Protective. He extended his hand, and a thin beam of light grazed across the shields. They all evaporated. But futile. He sounded disappointed now. If you cannot accept instruction, Light gathered in his palm, swirling, condensing into a spear of radiance. Wait! Yuki screamed. Wait! Don't! He launched it at Trama, who tried to dodge. He wasn't fast enough. The light spear slammed into his chest. Crack! The sound echoed horribly as his body collided with a tree. Bark shattered, splintering outward as he hit the ground with a thud so loud, Yuki felt it in her teeth. His health bar plummeted, 70% gone in a single strike. Yuki sprinted toward him, conjuring barrier after barrier, but they broke instantly, shredded by the Grandmaster's casual countercasting. Phaedra was already moving too, her staff glowing with healing magic, skirts swishing around her boots as her steps quickened. Yuki reached Tramar first. Tramar, please! He slumped against the cracked tree trunk, wheezing. Blood soaked through his tunic where the spear had hit, pooling under him. His hands shook uncontrollably as he fumbled for a health potion. He tried to form another rune. I can't, he choked out, voice breaking. Yuki, I can't remember the runes. They're too hard for me. I failed math. Yuki's heart shattered. She had never seen him like this. Not loud, not cocky, not reckless. Scared. Truly scared. Tramar, you can do this, she whispered desperately. You're strong. You always. He downed the potion in a gulp. His health climbed, but his hands still trembled violently. He tried to stand, stumbled, and caught himself on the tree. The Grand Master approached with unhurried steps, as if they had all the time in the world. Phaedra slid between him and Tramar, staff raised like a spear. That is enough. The Grand Master barely glanced at her. Is it? He has not learned yet. Ears down, Phaedra said coldly. You proved your point. Did I? His voice was soft, almost disappointed. Behind her, Tramar pushed off the tree again, wobbling but upright. He spread his fingers, trying to summon flame. Only sparks came after he messed the runes. Tiny orange sputters, nothing coherent. His expression collapsed. Yuki felt tears sting her eyes. He's giving up. He thinks he's nothing. He thinks he can't do it. Before the Grand Master lifted his hand for the next attack, the fox's voice cut the clearing in half. Tramar. The word was soft, but it rang like a bell. Tramar's head snapped toward the fox. You survived by being loud, the fox said gently. But dawn does not roar. It stepped closer, its body glowing brighter. It simply arrives. Golden light unfurled from the fox's tails, threads of warmth, soft and unwavering, wrapping around Tramar's arms. His chest, his trembling fingers weaving through him like light filtering through morning mist. He gasped. His eyes widened. Something entered him and Yuki's interface flashed. Ali acquired new skill, Dawn Fire. He stared at his hands. Golden flame danced between his fingers. Not orange, not red, not wild or unstable. I got a new skill, he breathed. Dawn Fire. His voice trembled, but not with fear this time, with awe. He looked up at the Grandmaster, still shaking, but something in his eyes had changed. Still afraid, but newly anchored, like a rope thrown to someone drowning. Okay, he whispered. Okay, let's try this again. He raised both hands. Dawn Fire swirled, gathering into a compact sphere that hummed with luminous heat as he used the simplest runes for fireball. He hurled it. The bolt hit the Grandmaster's shield and cracked it. A visible fissure ran across the barrier. The Grandmaster's eyebrows rose. Interesting. Yuki's breath escaped her in a stunned exhale. Tramar. He grinned, shaky but determined. Round 2, old man. He summoned another bolt, and the Grandmaster had to dodge. Yuki's heart leapt. We can hurt him now. Phaedra lifted her staff beside Tramar, light swirling. Yuki formed new mirrors, and they stepped forward as a unit now. A real team. The Grandmaster's eyes narrowed, and his magic intensified, light gathering like a storm. Enough games. Chapter 268. Enough games. Book 4. Yuki felt the moment the Grandmaster got bored. It wasn't the words, not at first. Not even the sigh that slipped past his lips like someone closing a book halfway through a chapter that wasn't challenging enough. It was the way the surrounding light tightened, the lazy little flares and idle ripples snapping inward as if someone had pulled a drawstring, the ambient glow condensing into something narrower. Enough games. The tone wasn't loud, but it hit like a system notification that absolutely did not bode well. Yuki's stomach dropped. Shed felt his power before, during the testing jabs and petty lecture attacks. She had seen him swat aside Tramar's best efforts and unweave her spells mid-cast, but that had been him playing. Him being smug and slightly entertained. This felt different. The air itself grew heavier, as if light suddenly had mass and all of it was piling onto the center of the clearing. Oh no, she thought numbly. Oh no, oh no, oh no. He was holding back before. His gaze slid past Yuki and Tramar and went straight to Fedra. The healer, he said, as if he were pointing out a faulty hinge. Remove the healer, and the rest falls apart. For half a second, nobody moved. Then Phaedra's eyes widened, because he was right. And they all knew it, and that was the problem. Tramar could throw fire until his mana hit 0. Yuki could contort light until her brain melted, but without the steady glow at their backs, without the quiet golden pulses that pushed health bars back. Up from red, there were just two squishy players in front of a boss. Merveilleux. How accurate that is, Phaedra muttered, shifting instantly into her raid glide, ducking behind a tree, then the next, never still long enough for the Grandmaster to line up anything easy. Yuki's panic crystallized into motion. She thrust both hands out, mana rushing into form the way it always did when everything inside her screamed, protect, protect, protect. The maximum 3 mirrors bloomed into existence in a staggered wall, angled plates of light, overlapping slightly like improvised shields. I won't let you, she shouted. The Grandmaster didn't even stop walking. Child, he said, almost bored. You cannot stop this. The construct forming above his hand wasn't like the elegant little lances head thrown earlier, those precise scalpel shots meant to poke at them and make a point. This was bigger, thicker, the color shifting toward pure, brutal light, no nuance, no artistry, just condensed intent turned into a weapon. It lengthened into a spear, a lance of blinding radiance, the tip so bright Yuki had to squint, even with her own light magic fluttering defensively around her retinas. The air screamed faintly as it formed, like reality wasn't thrilled about being asked to hold that much power in one shape. He didn't gesture dramatically. He didn't shout the spell name. He just flicked his hand. The spear ripped forward. Yuki's mirrors shattered in a single vicious line, each one exploding into useless motes as the lance threaded through them like they were made of paper. The speed wasn't fair. Her eyes could barely keep up, her brain lagging a half second behind the motion, like a poor connection trying to render a high-end spell effect. It was aimed straight at Phaedra's heart. Phaedra moved, her positioning was almost perfect, a sideways slip behind thicker cover, timing calculated to the half moment. Everything textbook level good, but the magic didn't care about her textbook. It was faster. Yuki's heart lurched. It's going to hit. Tramar saw it, or maybe he didn't see all of it. Maybe he just saw the line, the wrongness, the way the Grandmaster's gaze had pinned Phaedra like a target. Maybe his brain didn't have time for visuals at all, and only heard the silent alarm going off somewhere between friend and threat. Whatever it was, he moved. He didn't shout her name, he didn't explain. He just threw himself at her, tackling her sideways in a full-body collision that would have been hilarious in any other context, both of them going down in a tangle of limbs and cloak. The spear hit where Phaedra's heart would have been. Tramar's shoulder was there instead. The sound was awful, Tramar hissed, and his body snapped backward with the force, momentum twisted by the tackle so he half rolled, half collapsed, knees slamming into the moss. His health bar plummeted, a sickening chunk cut out of the red. A clean 90% gone in a blink. The spear evaporated, its job done, leaving a smoking hole in his shoulder and a sick glow lingering along the edges of the wound. Phaedra hit the ground, rolled, and was back on her feet in a heartbeat, hair a mess, eyes wide and blazing. Non-Tramar. Her voice came out somewhere between a snarl and a gasp. You idiot. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands already glowing, the golden light rushing to life around her fingers without any of the usual measured, elegant build-up. I should have seen it, Yuki thought, watching her, chest tight. I should have predicted the target. I should have angled better. I should have been faster. She's thinking the same, another part of her supplied. She's blaming herself for the hit she didn't take. Phaedra pressed her hands to Tramar's chest, glow flaring bright enough to tint his already pale face in warm gold. His health bar jerked upward, climbing back into safer territory, but before Yuki could exhale in relief, it started dropping again. Not as fast as the initial blow, not a cliff, but a steady, merciless drainage, tick by visible tick. A status icon blinked into existence next to it. Attention, light corruption, HP draining, 10-second, Merde. It's chewing through him, she snapped, eyes flashing. The spell, Il Range Encore, it's still eating inside. She poured more mana into him. The glow intensified, the healing numbers visibly higher, directly fighting the steady 10 ticks. Tramar's health bounced like a badly tuned graph, up, down, never stabilizing, never breaking free from that corrosive drag. Yuki's pulse hammered. The Grandmaster stood a few paces away, not pressing the attack, not following up, just watching. As if this were a lab result, and he wanted to see how far they'd go to skew the variables. Fascinating, he remarked, almost conversational. The light outpaces your healing. What will you do? Phaedra did not look at him. I make it stop, she spat. Evidement. Sweat beaded at her temple, her mana bar already sliding downward faster than Yuki liked. Phaedra, your pool, Yuki started. I know, Phaedra bit out. Couvre-nous. Now. That, at least, Yuki could do. She threw herself in front of them, hands slamming into motion, mirrors blooming one after another. She angled them high, low, overlapping, tried to layer all three of them with illusion skill, anything to draw the Grandmaster's focus, anything to make him look at her instead of the bleeding fire mage. And the healer trying to plug a hole with her bare hands. Look at me, she shouted. Fight me. She cracked a whip of light at his eyes, sent a blinding flash straight into his face, added a scattering of false Yuki silhouette. Her mana burned, but she didn't care. She just needed to buy seconds. He looked at her shields, at her illusion, at the way she stood between him and her friends. He flicked his fingers. Her whole mirror formation detonated, as if someone had hit delete on her code. The flash fizzled into nothing halfway through forming. Her double image blew apart like dust. He barely even shifted his weight. But futile, he said like a teacher marking her exam with a big red X. Behind her, Tramar sucked air between his teeth, eyes squeezed shut, sweat mixing with blood on his collar. Phaedra, he managed, his voice rough and thready. Stop, he need to fight. Non, Phaedra snapped, her voice shaking now with strain and something hotter underneath. I can stabilize you. I just need. Her words cut off as she poured even more magic into him. Yuki could see the mana bar dropping like a waterfall now, each pulse of healing more demanding than the last. But Tramar's HP wouldn't cooperate. It kept seesawing between maybe okay and absolutely not okay. Yuki's throat burned. She turned halfway, still facing the Grandmaster but calling over her shoulder. Phaedra, you need to let Tramar go, hell respawn. Let's fight with me. I can't hold him if. J.E. says C.E.Q.G.E. dois fed. Phaedra screamed. The sound hit Yuki like a slap. Phaedra never yelled at her. Phaedra teased, scolded, soothed, muttered murder at malfunctioning systems. But she didn't shout like that. Not at Yuki, not with that knife-thin fear laced through every syllable. Yuki flinched, hands stuttering for a second before she forced another mirror into existence. Her chest hurt in a way that had nothing to do with health values. Phaedra dragged in a breath, shoulders shaking, then forced her voice down to something almost controlled. I will not lose him, she said, each word trembling with restraint. I can do this, Sul. Her hands never stopped glowing. Yuki swallowed, alone. That word lodged somewhere between her ribs and stayed there. She risked a glance toward the edge of the clearing, toward the fox. It stood where it had been, golden light wrapped tight around itself. Its eyes watched Phaedra with a sorrow that made Yuki's skin crawl. Help her, Yuki shouted. Give her something like you gave Tramar. Shez, spiraling. The fox held her gaze. Sad, silent, no system notification, no golden threads of dawn wrapping Phaedra's hands, no new skill pop-up, nothing. Phaedra hadn't learned whatever the labyrinth wants her to learn. Yuki's heart slammed against her ribs. This wasn't about raw output, or who could shove the most mana into a problem until it stopped screaming. Behind her, Phaedra's mana dipped into the danger zone. The bar so low it made Yuki's brain flash red warning triangles. Tramar's health bounced again, hit a sliver above the critical line, then wobbled uncertainly as the light corruption icon kept ticking away like a metronome counting down to something she really didn't want to see. Yuki turned back to the Grandmaster, breath coming too fast, fingers shaking. He watched them all with the same distant curiosity. Interesting, he said softly. Let us see how long you cling to the illusion of control. It's just me now. Really, actually me. She didn't hesitate, not because she was brave, but because hesitation meant watching one of them go to respawn in slow motion. So she surged forward with every mirror, barrier, and light construct she could summon, layering them in angles she barely understood, trying to buy time, space, oxygen, anything that would keep the Grandmaster's attention off the two people behind her who were fighting battles she could not help them with. Her mana burned hot and fast. Every spell felt like throwing pieces of herself into a void she couldn't fill. It didn't matter. The Grandmaster advanced as if strolling through a morning garden. Yuki lashed a whip of light at him. It slid off his shielding like water refusing to cling. She detonated a blinding flash at his eyes. He blinked it away, as though brushing dust from his sleeve. Illusions danced around him in desperate flares of motion. He ignored them utterly, stepping through them like someone walking through fog. You work very hard, he said, as he swept aside her entire formation with a single widening pulse of pale gold magic. But effort without understanding is merely noise. The blast caught her dead on. It wasn't lethal, but it ripped the air from her lungs and lifted her body off the ground, flinging her backwards so fast she barely had time to register the spin before she slammed into the moss and rolled, her sword skittering several feet out of reach. Her health bar plunged into red, her vision tunneled, the forest warped and spun. She crawled. Her body felt too small for the pain inside it, every breath a jagged scrape. She stretched her fingers toward the sword, too far, and tried again, dragging herself inch by inch through the dirt because stopping wasn't an option, not when the fox was watching in a silent stillness. That felt like judgment and mourning combined. The Grandmaster exhaled a long, tired sigh. This grows tedious. He looked at them. Tramar slumped and barely conscious, Fedra kneeling with trembling hands, Yuki bleeding and crawling, and something in his expression shifted from curiosity to conclusion. Then he turned toward the fox. Yuki's heart stuttered. No, 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 he couldn't. Let us end this properly, the Grandmaster said, raising his hand. The light forming in his palm wasn't a spear this time. It was something heavier, something with the unmistakable finality of ending, the spell that wasn't meant to teach or warn, but erase. The fox stood at the edge of the clearing like a flickering sun about to be snuffed. Yuki tried to stand, but her legs buckled. She should have bought more potions from Scamantha. Stop, she rasped, even as she knew her voice wasn't loud enough, wasn't anything enough. Fedra saw the incoming attack at the same moment. Her entire body went still. In a single instant, she assessed Tramar, assessed the fox, assessed Yuki, and made a decision with a speed and certainty that felt almost violent. PhDRE! No! Yuki screamed. She was already running, but not toward the Grandmaster. Toward the fox. She reached it just as the Grandmaster unleashed the spell, her body sliding between the fox and the killing blow with the inelegance of someone who had spent her whole life putting her own safety second, sometimes last. The light struck her dead center. There was no scream, only a soft, startled exhale as the impact lifted her slightly off her feet, the world pausing around her like even the forest wasn't sure what had just happened. Her body hit the ground with quiet finality. Finish the quest for me? She whispered, smiling as if she actually believed Yuki could. Her health bar didn't drop in chunks, it didn't wobble, it didn't resist. It emptied in a single, brutal flicker. HP 0320. Her body shattered into light, and her equipment rained onto the grass in a soft metallic scatter. For a moment, there was no sound at all. Then Tramar woke. He saw the empty space where she had been. He saw her staff among her clothes. He saw the Grandmaster turning back toward him with the cold efficiency of someone crossing names off a list. You, Tramar whispered. You bastard! Stupid illusion! Stupid quest! He rose and dawnfire exploded from his hands. Stupid fox reminding me the school. The flames surged in a golden white torrent, enough that Yuki shielded her eyes instinctively. The blast hit the Grandmaster's shielding so hard the air cracked, and for the first time, the Grandmaster staggered. White Grandmaster, HP 2041-2000 run. It wasn't much damage, but it was damage. Tramar roared, firing again, pushing forward with a broken sort of determination. and for a heartbeat Yuki dared to hope. Maybe grief was enough. Maybe Dawnfire was enough. Maybe. The Grandmaster's expression sharpened. Enough. Light condensed in his hand, shaping into a blade so clean it looked like a single stroke of sunrise carved out of reality. Shamar tried to dodge. He wasn't fast enough. The blade went through his chest as if it were nothing. No resistance, no sound except his breath catching once, before his body dissolved into falling equipment and fading light. HP 0324. Yuki froze. The clearing felt impossibly large and impossibly silent, and she was suddenly, crushingly aware of the fact that she was the only one left standing, or rather kneeling, barely upright, trembling and bleeding, and so very small in front of a figure who had wiped out two of her friends like they were warm-up exercises. "Child," the Grandmaster said as he approached her, "this is over." She stood anyway, grabbed the sword and hobbled toward him. She swung at him, and he blocked it with one hand, not even changing expression. She swung again, and each strike grew weaker until her fingers couldn't hold the hilt and the sword fell from her grip. Her knees hit the dirt. "I can't," she whispered, voice shaking, as the Grandmaster lifted his hand for the final blow. "This would be my trial. My greatest fear. Being left alone. It still came despite Phaedra trying to protect me from it. I can't do this alone. You were never meant to be." The voice wasn't his. The fox stepped forward, glowing brighter than it ever had, its light washing over her in warm waves. "And yet you fought. Never meant to fight alone, never meant to carry everything." Its body shimmered, unraveling into golden ribbons of dawnlight that reached for her like threads searching for a place to bind. "But you can carry this." Yuki's interface flared open. Her breath caught. She looked at the fox, then at the Grandmaster, then slammed YES. Chapter 269, Tail Physics. Book 4. Yuki hit YES so hard, her shaking finger nearly punched through the interface. The moment the command registered, the world detonated. Just light, golden, and impossibly warm, bursting from the Sun Fox in a violent wave that didn't push outward so much as expand in every direction at once, like dawn, deciding it no longer needed a sun to exist and would simply bloom wherever it pleased. The Grandmaster had been mid-strike, his hand raised, killing magic gathered in a white lance that hummed with lethal intention, and that light wave hit him like a silent tidal force. His entire body locked. Not frozen the way Queen's ice freezes something. Not halted the way a time spell holds someone motionless. This was different, stranger, as if the flow of his subjective time had been grabbed by the spine and held there by a claw made of sunrise. He didn't move or blink. Even the magic in his hand flickered as if unsure whether it still belonged in a world where the fox's bloodline was being rewritten. But Yuki still moved, trembling, gasping, kneeling in the dirt with her sword somewhere behind her and her breath too shallow to be useful. The fox's light didn't stop at her skin. It went through her, into her, threading itself into the tiny spaces between her mana veins, her bones, her memories, lighting up everything she was with her. Slow, overwhelming certainty of something ancient deciding she was worth investing in. The fox's voice deepened. "This is your only chance. Win or lose this forever." Yuki's thoughts stuttered. What? "If you fall here," the fox continued, voice resonating against her ribs, "you will respawn even worse than you were. A1 common mage, powerless, untouched by the dawn." Yuki's blood went cold. Worse. As in, permanently? "The bloodline will fade. You will never touch power of light or any other magic again. Your class permanently marred." A buzzing filled her ears. No, her pulse heavy and frantic, like someone hammering at the inside of her throat trying to break out. Permanent consequences. She could lose everything. Her mirror magic, her illusions, her identity. All of it. "But I don't know how to. I've never." Her voice broke on the last word. The fox came closer, though it wasn't walking. It flickered like a projection stepping between frames. "I see your terror." "Oh, good," Yuki whispered, "because I am absolutely radiating it. The Grandmaster is not an illusion. The day he slew me, part of his essence also left him. What you fight is the world's memory of the man who killed me." The clearing seemed to darken around them, with the fox glowing brighter in the center of it. "I cannot give you time to practice," it said softly, but I can give you time to read. The interface bloomed open. Class: Sun Fox's Inheritor. Type: 6 Marvel Evolving. Description: Once, the Sun Fox wove dawn itself into shields that humbled armies and illusions so perfect they rewrote reality. When hunters came with prepared magic and cold pragmatism, the fox fell. But its essence endured, waiting for one desperate enough, brave enough, to carry what it could not. The Inheritor does not merely wield light. They are light given form and will. They walk between truth and illusion, substance and shimmer, wielding the fox's ancient mastery over dawn magic. Where others see barriers, the Inheritor sees canvas. Where others cast light, the Inheritor paints reality itself. This class thrives in impossible situations, when outnumbered, when the odds demand a miracle. The Inheritor does not hide. They dazzle, deceive, and strike from angles that shouldn't exist. The Sun Fox could not save what it loved. But perhaps you can finish what the fox started. Yuki's breath caught somewhere around her sternum and refused to continue functioning properly. "This," she whispered, "this is real." The fox's voice warmed. "Understand what you carry, then trust it." She nodded once, jerkily, and accepted fully. The light pounced. Her skull heated first, the shape shifting beneath her scalp with a pressure that felt half like being compressed and half like being unwrapped. She grabbed her head with both hands, crying out as something pushed upward, then burst free, not painfully, but sharply enough to make stars explode behind her eyes. Fox ears. Golden-furred, tufted at the tips, perking up at sound she hadn't even consciously registered. They twitched of their own accord, which startled her so badly she nearly fell sideways. "Oh, oh no, oh wow, those are mine?" "Ah." Her spine cracked, like someone pulling a zipper open from the inside, and 3 long, radiant tails unfurled behind her, semi-transparent at first, flickering like lazy sunbeams caught in smoke, before solidifying into flowing ribbons of dawn light that swayed on their own axis of balance. She whipped around and nearly smacked herself with one, then another, then tripped over the third. Tail physics. Why didn't anyone tell me tail physics were a thing? Her eyes changed next. She felt it, a burning beneath her lashes, as if her gaze itself were being reforged like molten metal poured into a new mold. When she blinked, her pupils had narrowed to slits, and amber had been swallowed by swirling gold. Her hair caught the ambient light strangely, like the strands had turned into tiny prisms refracting color into the air around her. Her clothes didn't shift, but somehow they felt made for her new shape, moving with her instead of against her. Whatever those gods like Sayavin were, the ones Charlie had cursed for making female armor aggressively impractical, at least they'd gotten this right. The system chimed. Sunlit sovereignty, new skill. Type: 6 Marvel effect. All light-based magic becomes free form. The Inheritor can shape, bend, and manifest light without predefined spells. Automatically enhances all existing light abilities. Passive. Always active info. You do not command the dawn. You are the dawn. Yuki stared at the text so long she forgot to breathe. "Freeform?" she squeaked. "I don't have to cast a specific thing. I can just... She flexed her fingers. Light rippled through them as though eager, like it had been waiting all her life for permission. "This is what Lisa does," she whispered, awestruck. "All the time." Another notification. Fox Fireblade, new skill. Type: 6 Marvel effect. Coat your weapon in concentrated dawn light. All attacks deal additional light damage, scales with mana investment, and pierce magical defenses at reduced damage. The blade can cut through illusions and reveal hidden enemies within 10 mi. Light persists on the weapon for 5 minutes or until dismissed. Duration: 5 minutes cooldown, 3 minutes info. The blade that parts illusion from truth burns brightest at the edge. Pierces? Yuki clapped her hands to her mouth. That's illegal. That should be illegal." Her tails fluffed in excitement as another notification popped. Dawn Weaver. Replacing light shields. Type: 6 Marvel effect. Manifest up to 6 light mirrors simultaneously. These mirrors can deflect incoming attacks or redirect magic back at attackers. Mirrors form instantly, at the Inheritor's will, within a small radius and cost minimal mana to maintain. Each mirror lasts 30 seconds or until destroyed. Cooldown: equal to the duration each mirror was active. Info: The Sun Fox did not hide behind illusions. It painted the world in its own light, then moved through the spaces between. She nearly screamed. 6! I only had 3. Oh, my sovereign. I'm a tanky light user now, a magic swordswoman. Her brain shorted for a moment from sheer joy. Phantom light dance. Replaces mirror image type. 6. Marvel effect. The inheritor's movement becomes fluid and unpredictable, leaving behind after images of golden light. For 20 seconds, her dodge chance increases based on her mastery. Additionally, once per dance, she can step through space. A short-range teleportation, 3M maximum achieved by dissolving into light and reforming. Duration, 20 seconds. Cooldown, 2 minutes. Info, Dawn does not walk. It flows, bends, and arrives where it wishes. Never where you expect. Teleport? Her voice cracked spectacularly. That's not even light. That's full-on anime protagonist. Her ears perked straight up as the chains on the Grandmaster cracked a bit. Her time was running out. Dawn illusion. Replacing magic illusion, type 6 Marvel effect, creates illusions almost indistinguishable from reality within a 30 mi radius. Illusions can interact physically, deal minor damage, provide cover for up to 10 seconds before fading. Duration. Illusions last 10 seconds or until dispelled. You can recast if destroyed, and duration is paused until it reaches 10 seconds. Cooldown, 5 minutes. Info. The greatest trick the fox ever pulled was making you believe the illusion mattered more than what it was hiding. Yuki sucked in a sharp breath. Physical illusions. The Sun Fox's battlefield illusions, those stories weren't exaggerations. In the Chronicle, that historian, the funny one, wrote about how you fought off an entire army at dawn, and I thought he was exaggerating, but the fox's tail brushed her ankle. You do not have time to explain what is in the past. Right. Not the time for historian essays. She inhaled, steadying herself, and checked her mana. It jumped up by half. Mana, 435, 435. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. She hadn't meant to say it out loud. But you gave me everything you had, so I won't waste it. She reached for her sword. The moment her fingers closed around the hilt, dawn fire flared along the blade, unbidden, as if the weapon itself were eager to greet her. At the edge of the clearing, the frozen chains around the Grandmaster's suspended time splintered, small cracks forming where the fox's power weakened as it merged with her. The fox's form flickered. Show him, it whispered, voice already fading into dust and warmth. What dawn can do when it refuses to be extinguished. Yuki inhaled and stepped forward, tails fanning behind her like a small, defiant sunrise. Her stance was still awkward. She was still Yuki after all, but for once she didn't feel tiny or doomed. The last chain shattered. The Grandmaster blinked free, then froze again, not in stasis, but in surprise. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since the trial began, something like genuine curiosity crossed his features. Interesting, he murmured. You've bonded with... Yuki cut him off. The first time in her life she had ever interrupted someone terrifying. Round 2, she said, voice steady even though her heart beat like a frantic drum. Her eyes glowed with molten sunrise. And this time? Her tails rose behind her like those queen's banners of war. I'm not alone anymore. She activated Foxfire Blade, with a thought, no incantation, no careful mana weaving, just want, and the sword erupted in golden dawn fire that climbed the steel like eager vines. The blade hummed in her grip, warm and alive. Okay, weapon enhancement, check, now. With system helping casting the runes, phantom light dance flared to life around her body. After images blooming like she'd been copied and pasted across 3 slightly offset timelines. Her muscles felt lighter, quicker, like someone had turned down gravity by 15%. She moved, or tried to. Her foot caught on absolutely nothing. Her new tail swung too far left for balance, and she stumbled forward in what was supposed to be a graceful combat dash, but looked more like an aggressive trip. The Grandmaster raised an eyebrow. Yuki's face flushed. I am still learning, okay? She swung anyway, blade trailing golden fire. He sidestepped with infuriating ease, not even bothering to block. Your form is? Yuki triggered the teleport. 3 meters, just 3 meters. I can do 3 meters. People teleport all the time in stories and... The world dissolved into light. For one weightless, terrifying instant, She was nowhere, just scattered photons with a vague memory of being a person, and then she slammed back into existence. 2 meters to the Grandmaster's left, and facing the wrong direction. What how? She spun, dizzy, tails whipping around and nearly hitting her own face. The Grandmaster turned to look at her, expression hovering somewhere between academic interest and second-hand embarrassment. Your spatial orientation requires work. YEA, thanks, I noticed. But she was close now, closer than she had ever gotten, and her sword was right there, dawn fire blazing. She thrust forward. The blade connected with his barrier, and this time it didn't just bounce off. The foxfire bit into the shield, chewing through the outer layer with a sizzling hiss. Cracks spiderwebbed across the translucent surface. The Grandmaster's eyes narrowed. Ah, he gestured, and the barrier exploded outward in a pulse of white light that sent Yuki flying backward. She hit the moss hard enough to bounce, rolled twice, and came up gasping, sword still somehow in her grip. Her health bar dipped. HP 429-4858 rate. But she was grinning. I hurt your shield, she shouted, breathless and slightly manic. Did you see? Yes, the Grandmaster said, and his tone had shifted from dismissive to focused. I saw. Light gathered in both his hands now, not the lazy testing shots from before, but something concentrated, serious. Yuki's grin faltered. Oh no, he fired. Chapter 270. The Fox Chose Well. Book 4. He fired. Not one lance. 3. They streaked toward her in a staggered formation, each one angled to cut off a different escape route, and Yuki's brain went into pure panic mode because Phantom Light Dance was still on cooldown and she couldn't teleport, and mirrors. She thrust both hands forward and pushed with her will, the system helping her to trace the runes. Dawnweaver exploded to life. 6 mirrors materialized in rapid succession. Pop, 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 pop. Each one a palm-sized plate of hardened light that shimmered like frosted glass. They formed in a chaotic scatter around her. No strategy, no formation, just, please block the murder lances, please, please, please. The first lance hit the mirror dead center. The mirror held. The beam refracted sideways, bending at an angle and shooting harmlessly into the canopy. Leaves burst into golden embers where it struck. Yuki's heart leapt. It worked. The second lance grazed the edge of another mirror, deflecting just enough to miss her by inches. She felt the heat sear past her cheek. The third one, she didn't have a mirror positioned right. Her sword came up on instinct, dawn fire still blazing along the blade, and she swung at the incoming light spear like she was trying to bat away an aggressive wasp as she used to at the east fortification. The foxfire connected. The lance shattered mid-flight, exploding into harmless sparks that rained down like dying fireflies. Yuki stared at her sword. I can hit his magic? The Grandmaster didn't answer. He was already casting again. This time he didn't give her time to think. A barrage of light bolts erupted from his hands, smaller than the lances but so many, at least a dozen, coming at her from multiple angles like he was trying to solve a geometry problem using her body as the proof. Non. Yuki spun, repositioning her mirrors with frantic mental commands. One mirror slid left to intercept a bolt, another angled up to deflect a shot coming from above. A third repositioned behind her just in time to catch a bolt she hadn't even seen coming. Crack, crack, deflect, deflect. But she was slow. She had 6 mirrors, but only 2 hands and a brain that was still catching up to the fact that she could move them with thought now, and the bolts were coming faster than she could redirect. One got through. It slammed into her shoulder with a crack that made her teeth rattle. Her health bar dropped. HP 39,948 so. She gasped, stumbling backward, but forced herself to keep moving because stopping meant dying, and she was not going to waste the fox's gift by standing still like an idiot. Another bolt whistled past her ear. She ducked, repositioned a mirror with a desperate shove of will, caught the next bolt on a deflection that sent it careening back toward the Grandmaster. He swatted it aside without even looking. Your defenses are improving, he observed, almost conversational, even as he continued to rain light death upon her. But you're reactive. Predictable. I am. Trying, Yuki shrieked. angling two mirrors to form a V-shaped barrier as another cluster of bolts streaked toward her face. They hit the mirrors. Both held. The bolts scattered, but her mana was draining faster than she had expected. Each mirror repositioning cost a sliver, each maintained second cost a trickle, and she was juggling 6 of them while trying not to die. The Grand Master paused his assault for half a second, just long enough to make her think Shed earned a reprieve, then snapped his fingers. A massive spear of light materialized above his head, easily twice the size of the ones before, condensed and furious with contained power. Yuki's blood went cold. Oh, that's not fair. He threw it. She screamed and shoved every single mirror into its path, layering them in a desperate stack. 3 in front and 3 behind, overlapping edges, no finesse, just please stop, the giant D-stick. The spear hit the first mirror, cracked it, punched through, hit the second, shattered it completely, slammed into the third, and stopped. Barely. The spear's tip pressed against the mirror's surface, light grinding against light, the mirror spiderwebbing with cracks but holding. And Yuki stood behind her last line of defense with her sword raised and her ears flat against her head, and her 3 tails puffed out like terrified bottle brushes. The spear dissipated. The mirror collapsed into golden dust. Yuki was left standing in a field of shattered light fragments, chest heaving, 5 mirrors still active, but her mana now sitting at a number that made her stomach lurch. The Grand Master tilted his head, studying her. You survived. Yeah, Yuki panted, sweat dripping down her temple. I noticed. She dismissed her remaining mirrors to have them ready when she needed them. Her sword still burned with foxfire, the blade trembling slightly in her white-knuckled grip. She was terrified. She was running out of resources. But she was still here. The Grand Master's expression shifted, just slightly, into something that might have been approval. Interesting. Most would have fallen by now. Yuki's ears twitched at a sound she couldn't quite identify. Branches rustling, wind. Her new hearing was still weird, and she forced herself to focus. Think, Yuki, think. He's stronger, faster, more experienced. But the fox didn't give you this power just to die 30 seconds later. There has to be. Her mind went back to her mirrors, to the way they deflected his magic, to the way her sword had cut through his spell, to the cooldown timer ticking down on Phantom Light Dance. 45 seconds remaining. She needed to survive 45 more seconds. Then she could move again. Then she could think. The Grandmaster raised his hand, light already gathering for the next assault. Yuki spread her fingers and saw she could summon 4 mirrors again. Come on then, she whispered, and her voice only shook a little. I'm not done yet. The Grandmaster's next attack came faster than thought. A dozen light spears materialized in a circle around him, rotating slowly like a deadly carousel before launching all at once in a spiraling pattern that left no escape angle, no safe direction, just overlapping trajectories. All of you will be hit. Yuki's breath caught. 4 mirrors. She had only 4 mirrors recharged. Not enough. Not nearly enough to block 12. But I don't need to block them all. The thought arrived with sudden crystalline clarity. I need to survive them. She summoned her mirrors in a tight formation directly in front of her, overlapping like scales, then activated Phantom Light Dance the instant the cooldown cleared. Golden afterimages exploded around her body. The spears hit her mirror wall with devastating force. 3 shattered immediately. The 4th cracked but held, and in that half second of impact, while the Grandmaster's attention was focused on the collision, Yuki moved. Not away. Toward him. She used the teleport mid-sprint, dissolving into light and reforming 3 meters closer, still facing slightly the wrong way, still dizzy from the displacement, but closer, and her sword was already swinging before her brain. Caught up to her body, the Grand Master's eyes widened. He raised a barrier quickly and efficiently. Her foxfire blade hit it and screamed. The barrier didn't shatter, it melted, the foxfire chewing through his magic like acid through paper, and her sword punched through the weakened shield and scored a line across his shoulder. Not deep. Barely a scratch. But contact. The Grandmaster stepped back, and for the first time in the entire fight, he looked genuinely surprised. You? Yuki didn't let him finish. She activated Dawn Illusion with a desperate shove of will. The air around the Grandmaster rippled, and 5 Yukis materialized in a loose circle surrounding him. Not after images, not shimmering copies that looked half real, solid. Each one moved independently, boots crunching on moss, tails swishing, fox ears twitching, breathing hard like they'd all just sprinted here. Each one raised a glowing sword. Each one looked at him with the same determined, slightly panicked expression. The Grand Master froze, eyes darting between them. Illusions. Clever, but… The Yuki to his left swung. He raised a barrier instinctively. The sword hit it. Hit it. The impact rang out, metal on magic, and the barrier spider-webbed with cracks. The Grand Master's eyes widened. That's… Another Yuki attacked from behind, blade arcing toward his shoulder. He spun, dispelling magic flaring from his hand, and the illusion. Yuki blocked with her sword, the clash of light on light echoing through the clearing before she dissolved into golden sparks. But shed lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds of physical interaction. They're real? The Grand Master's composure cracked for the first time, genuine alarm flickering across his face. A third Yuki lunged from his blind spot. He blasted her with a light lance. It punched through her chest, and she shattered, but not before her sword grazed his ribs. You can't, illusions don't. He was actually rattled now, spinning to track the remaining 3 Yukis, trying to identify the real one, trying to dispel them all at once. But sunlit sovereignty meant Yuki could pour mana into them, keeping them stable, keeping them solid, and the Grand Master's dispel magic scattered uselessly against constructs that were half real and half dawn. 2 more Yukis attacked in tandem, one high, one low, and the Grand Master had to dodge, actually physically dodge, because he couldn't tell which one would connect and which would dissolve. He destroyed both with a sweeping blast of white light. Dawn illusion duration, 2 seconds remaining, 1 Yuki left. The real one. She stood 5 meters behind him, chest heaving, mana dangerously low, but her sword still blazing with foxfire. The Grand Master turned slowly, breathing harder now. A thin line of golden blood, or light, or memory, something that looked like blood, trickling from the cut on his shoulder. You. He stared at her, and despite everything, he began to smile. The Sun Fox's illusions, the ones that held armies, his voice carried something like wonder. You inherited that. Yuki grinned, shaky, very exhausted and triumphant. Told you I wasn't alone anymore. The Grand Master's expression shifted from surprise to calculation. Then let us see how far you've truly come. He raised both hands, and the surrounding air condensed, light gathering in a sphere so bright it hurt to look at, so dense it warped the surrounding space. Yuki's stomach dropped. That was an ending spell. The magic that didn't leave room for clever dodges or lucky blocks. You've done well, the Grand Master said, voice holding no mockery now, only acknowledgement. But this trial ends here. He thrust his hands forward. The sphere launched. Yuki had 1 second to react, 1 second to decide. Mirrors won't stop that. More illusions won't wait. Wait. Her eyes went wide. She summoned every remaining mirror she had, 5 of them, barely off cooldown, and positioned them in a line between her and the incoming sphere. Not to block it, to angle it. Then she activated Dawn Illusion, 1 more time, with only 2 seconds remaining, pouring the last dregs of her mana into the most important illusion she'd ever cast. A wall, 10 meters tall, stretching across the clearing, solid and gleaming and positioned just right so that when the sphere hit her mirrors and refracted, it slammed into her illusory wall instead of her. The wall held. For 2 seconds, 2 precious, impossible seconds, the illusion absorbed the impact, light grinding against light, the construct shuddering but real enough to matter, real enough to exist. Then it shattered. But the sphere's momentum was broken, its power diffused, and when the residual blast washed over Yuki, it was weak enough that she could throw up her arms and survive it. HP 8748 Ennis. She hit the ground hard, ears ringing, vision swimming, every part of her body screaming, but alive, still alive. The Grand Master stood across from her, and slowly his smile deepened into something warmer, almost debut fond. You remind me, he said softly, of why I once loved teaching. Yuki blinked up at him, too exhausted to be confused properly. What? W? He looked down at his hands, and Yuki realized for the first time that they were beginning to fade, edges blurring like watercolor left too long in the sun. I am not him, the Grand Master said, voice quiet. I am what the world remembers, an echo, A role. He met her eyes. I knew this the moment I formed. I am destined to vanish. Yuki's throat tightened. But you fought so hard. Because that is what the memory demanded, he said simply. The white grandmaster who killed the sun fox. The teacher who saw potential and pushed his students to their breaking point. His smile deepened. But I enjoyed this, watching you three of you struggle and grow, survive. He looked toward where Tramar and Fedra had fallen, where their equipment still lay scattered on the moss. The loud one learned to be quiet. The perfect one learned she could not save everyone. His gaze returned to Yuki. And you? See, I learned I'm not alone, Yuki whispered. No, he agreed, his form growing more translucent by the second. You are not. He gestured to the scattered equipment. Your friends will return. They always do. That is the gift of your world. His voice grew softer. Use what the fox gave you and protect what it could not. He lifted one fading hand in a gesture that might have been a salute or a blessing or simply goodbye. The fox chose well, he said. And then he was gone. Just light dissolving into morning, leaving only silence and the faint scent of dawn. Yuki knelt there for a long moment, sword still in her trembling grip, three tails drooping with exhaustion, fox ears flat against her head. Then the system chimed. Chapter 271. The Frozen Throne. Book 4. Back to Charlie, a few days after Yuki's adventure. The Grand Hall looked like someone had taken the concept of authority and beaten it to death with a chandelier. It wasn't even subtle. They'd cleared the central aisle, dragged in banners that used to hang behind whatever important person had sat here before, and added new ones with my crest slapped onto them in a hurry. Someone had tried to be respectful about it, like, we're honoring the institution, Your Majesty, but all it did was make the place feel like a stage set built overnight by very enthusiastic amateurs who'd never met a minimalist in their lives. The worst part was the throne. Not because it was ugly, no, unfortunately, it was gorgeous. It sat on a raised dais that hadn't been there yesterday, a sculpted slab of pale stone that had been scrubbed so hard it looked like it had been ashamed of itself. On top of it was a chair made of frozen water. Frozen water, as if that was a normal interior design choice, and it looked like a wave had been captured mid-crash, curled into a seat, then polished until it gleamed like glass. It was a throne that screamed legendary artifact and do not lick in equal part. And it was, without exaggeration, the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever had. The displeasure of sitting on in my entire life. The cold bit through my sparse clothes, as if it was insulted by the concept of insulation. This is what happens when you let people make it grand. They don't make it grand. They make it dramatic. Like I'm about to deliver a villain monologue and throw a puppy off the balcony. Lola had told me that taking an audience was necessary. Her exact phrasing had been, morale needs a face, lady, a symbol, something that looks stable. I had squinted at her and said, I'm stable. She had looked at me over her clipboard, expression flat. You threatened to duel an entire Altandai tax office a few hours ago. In my defense, they started it. They started it by existing. Anyway, she'd given me two options, a public audience in the Grand Hall or paperwork, and I'd chosen the public audience with the same enthusiasm. A drowning person chose oxygen. Because paperwork was a mountain, and mountains didn't care if you were queen or raccoon, they still sat on your chest and suffocated you. Now, the Grand Hall was full of motion. Not chaos exactly. My people had gotten frighteningly competent lately, but there was an organized bustle that came from 10 different assistants trying to look like they belonged in a place that had once been reserved for people born into silk. There were 5 long tables off to the side, each one loaded with stacks of paper thick enough to stop an arrow. The assistants were arranged along them like scholars in a war room, quills moving, seals stamping, ledgers open, and every few seconds somebody hissed a question at somebody else like they were afraid the papers might hear and multiply out of spite. Boss, I'd seen battlefields with less terror. The custodian, however, was thriving. He stood near the front, hands clasped behind his back, posture perfect, face lit with a smile that looked like it had been trapped there by joy. He wore the same tidy uniform he always wore, but today it looked like it fit him better, like the Grand Hall had been starving without someone like him in it. He glanced at me, beamed, then turned smoothly toward the great doors, as if he could summon destiny with a polite cough. Your Majesty, he said, voice carrying the reverence of someone who'd spent his whole life delivering those words. The next petitioner. Petitioner. Right, we're doing that. I tried to look regal, which mostly meant I stopped fidgeting and pretended the ice wasn't freezing my spine into a new and deeply cursed posture. I rested my hands on the armrests, also ice, because apparently comfort was treason, and lifted my chin. The doors opened. The man who stepped inside didn't look like a noble or a merchant or anyone who'd ever had time to worry about whether his boots matched his belt. He was normal in the most painfully human way, like he'd been pulled straight out of a field and dropped into a cathedral. His clothes were rough-spun and patched, the fabric faded and stained with old dirt, greenish-brown smears, and sun-bleached sweat. His hands were calloused, fingers thick from work. His hair was cut short and uneven, like he'd done it himself with a knife and impatience. There were tiny cracks on his knuckles, the kind you got from cold mornings and hard labor. His boots were worn at the toe and damp at the edges, as if he'd walked through mud to get here and hadn't had the luxury of caring. He held a bottle in both hands, as if it was sacred. Not fancy glass or polished label, just a simple dark vessel with a wax seal. He kept glancing at it like it might vanish if he looked away. He reached the halfway point of the aisle and stopped, eyes flicking up to me with something like panic and stubborn pride colliding in his chest. Before he could speak, one of my assistants peeled off from the side like a trained hawk. She moved fast, and she didn't look impressed by the bottle or the man's nervousness. She stopped in front of him and held out her hands, palms up. "Is that for the Queen?" The man blinked, swallowed, and nodded quickly. The assistant took the bottle without ceremony and carried it away as if she'd just collected a ledger. He watched it go with the expression of someone watching his child get taken into surgery, him about to drink something a stranger dragged out of a field. Cool, love this for me. Of course, we weren't idiots, not anymore. The assistant didn't bring it directly to me. She handed it to another assistant at the edge of the dais, who traced a quick sigil in the air over the bottle. A pale shimmer ran across the glass, like a net of frost spreading and then evaporating. Another assistant followed with a second spell, a thin line of light that circled the neck and sank into the wax seal. I didn't know the exact names of the spells, but I recognized the vibes: detect poison, detect curse, detect this is secretly a jar of bees. The bottle remained, tragically, not a jar of bees. When the last shimmer faded, the assistant climbed the steps and offered it to me with both hands. I took it, feeling the weight, the cold glass against my gloves, and the faint scent that leaked through the wax, warm, earthy sweet, with something smoky underneath. The man cleared his throat. "Your Majesty," he said, voice rough, if you would. Taste." He said it as if it mattered, like it was a test, or a gift, or an offering to a god that might decide whether his village got rain. I tilted the bottle slightly, studying him. He stood straight, but his shoulders were tight, his jaw set, and his eyes had that raw, stubborn fear of people who'd spent their whole lives being ignored and didn't quite believe the world could change. "What is it?" I asked. His expression brightened just a fraction, as if I'd thrown him a rope. "Salin, 7 years old, made here in Altandai like my father made and his father before. 300 years, Your Majesty. Maybe more. It's ours, Salin." The name rang with something old, something that had been important long before I'd stumbled into this world and accidentally ended up wearing a crown like it was a helmet. I glanced down at the bottle and, out of habit, pinged the system. A faint overlay flickered in front of my eyes. Bottle of Salin. Quality: 3 rare info. A blended spirit from Altandai, aged for 7 years in sealed casks. I stared at the word rare and felt my brain do that gamer thing where it tried to categorize everything by color and loot tables. "Congratulations, Charlie. Your first royal audience gift is alcohol. Nice." I looked back at the man. "So it's not poisoned, cursed, or full of bees," I said, mostly to myself. A couple of assistants made sounds that were either polite laughter or distress at my lack of decorum. The man, bless him, didn't know what to do with that, so he just nodded again, hard. "Fine," I said, and lifted the bottle. The first sip hit like a warm slap. It wasn't sweet or gentle. It had that sharp bite that tequila had, the clean, agave-like sting that shot straight up the back of your throat and made your eyes want to water out of principle, but it was layered, with something deeper, darker, more patient. The finish rolled in like whiskey, smoky and oak warm, with a faint spice that lingered on my tongue like a dare. It tasted like sunlight baked into wood and bottled with stubbornness. It tasted like a field at noon and a fire at night. It tasted good. I swallowed, then took another sip because I wasn't a coward, and also because I was, apparently, a queen in a frozen chair who deserved a small joy. A grin tugged at my mouth before I could stop it. Okay, I admitted. That's actually amazing. The man's shoulders loosened so fast it was like he'd been holding his breath since he walked in. His eyes flashed, proud and relieved, and for a second he looked younger, like the weight of the hall wasn't crushing him anymore. I lowered the bottle and leaned forward slightly. So, I said, why are you here? That question hit him harder than any spell. His smile faltered. He swallowed, and his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Then he drew in a deep breath, like he was about to lift something heavy. My family, he began, voice steadying with effort, has worked the fields outside Altandai for 5 generations. Under the sun, under the overseers, under the ones who owned the land and the casks and the press. We grew what they told us to grow, harvested what they told us to harvest, and we were proud because it was our work, even when it wasn't our name on the bottle. His gaze flicked to the bottle in my hands, then back to my face. Now, he said, the old masters are gone. The way he said gone was careful, not celebratory or angry, just factual. Like he didn't trust the world enough to gloat. And the owners of Salen fled the city, he continued. The storehouses, the fields, the casks. It fell into royal hands. He swallowed again, and his eyes honed with something like desperation. I nodded slowly. That tracks, I said. We've been finding a lot of royal hand situations. Lola had called it asset reclamation. The custodian had called it restoration of lawful ownership. I'd called it, oh my God, stop handing me keys to things I didn't ask for. The man lifted his chin. Your Majesty, he said, I beg you do not turn the Salen fields into Tagrain farms. The words landed in the hall with a strange heaviness. I blinked once. Then I turned my head slightly, because I had to confirm reality hadn't just blue-screened. I looked to the nearest assistant, the one who'd been living in paperwork hell since I refused to, and my voice came out exactly as intelligent as I felt. What the hell is a grain farm? The assistant froze as if I'd accused her of treason. Then she recovered, flipping through a stack of papers so fast it looked like she was trying to summon a demon out of bureaucracy. It means reallocating agricultural land to staple crops, she blurted. Wheat, barley, rye. For general food security, Your Majesty. Why would we do that? I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the side tables, and I followed her gaze. 5 tables, each one buried under paper. Assistants hunched over like soldiers in a siege, ink-stained, tired-eyed, whispering over property claims, ration distribution, guard rosters, rebuilding orders, and probably the official legal definition of what counts as a cursed statue and can we throw it into the river. One of them had a stack so high it had to be held upright with a literal bookend. This is the real boss fight, not grandmasters, nor traitors, nor demon princes. Paper. The assistant cleared her throat. There are proposals, she said carefully, for land optimization. Some estates were used for luxury crops or Salen, the man cut in, voice cracking with urgency. It's not a luxury. It's what we are. It's what we do. It's our craft. And if you turn the fields to grain, it will be gone. The yeast lines, the press schedules, the cask rotation. He stopped, realizing he was rambling, and his face flushed. He bowed his head quickly. Forgive me, I am nervous. I stared at him for a moment, then exhaled slowly. He was a man begging me not to delete 300 years of tradition because someone needed a spreadsheet to look nice. I lifted a hand slightly. Hold up, I said, and my voice softened despite myself. What's your name? He blinked, startled by the question. My name? Yes, I said. Your name. The one you've had since birth. The one I'm guessing nobody in this hall has asked you. He swallowed, then straightened as if he was bracing for punishment. Gale, he said. Gale. Gale. He started to add something else, then shook his head quickly. Just Gale, Your Majesty. Gale, I repeated, tasting the name like it mattered, because it did. I glanced down at the bottle again, then took another sip, because timing was everything, and also because I wanted the flavor in my mouth when I said the next part. I looked back at him and let the grin return. Gale, I said, There is absolutely no way Salem is getting turned into tigraine farms. A few people in the hall made confused noises at my wording. But Gale's face did something incredible. His eyes widened, then his whole expression collapsed into relief, so intense it looked like he might actually sit down on the floor. He didn't, because pride and decades of being told not to take up space kept him upright. But his shoulders sagged like the world had finally loosened its grip on his throat. I watched the release settle in properly. Good. That meant it mattered. I leaned back against the throne, immediately regretted that life choice, and cleared my throat. "Custodian," I said, pitching my voice to carry. He straightened instantly. "Your Majesty, how many petitioners are left?" He consulted a small slate with an efficiency that bordered on ritual. "3 more, Majesty. 2 property claims and 1 guild grievance." I nodded once. Then I stood up. Well, attempted to stand up. The throne clung to me as if it was offended I was leaving. There was a split second where I genuinely thought I'd frozen myself in a place like some kind of idiot Ice Queen statue. Then I wrenched myself free, heels scraping against stone, cloak swishing, dignity suffering mild but survivable injuries. Several assistants gasped. One of them actually took a step forward, like she was about to catch me if I fell, which was sweet and deeply insulting. I hopped down from the dais, not gracefully, but decisively. The hall went quiet as I had just broken a rule nobody had written down yet. "Those 3 are out of luck," I said cheerfully, already walking. "They can come back tomorrow." The custodian blinked. "Majesty?" I kept going, passing the edge of the dais, the tables, the stacks of paper that looked like they might actually hiss if disturbed. "I'm done sitting on frozen furniture pretending I'm a decorative solution to systemic problems," I added. "I've made my call for the day." Gale turned slowly, confusion battling hope again. "Your Majesty." I stopped in front of him and held up the bottle of Salin. "You," I said, pointing at him with it, "are taking me to see how this is made." The effect was immediate. One assistant dropped her quill. Another made a strangled sound like she'd just swallowed a scheduling nightmare whole. "Majesty. W. Will need advance notice for an inspection. Escort security assessments." "I am the security assessment," I said lightly. "And I've already had the drink. If it kills me, you can write a very dramatic report." "That is not reassuring," she whispered. I smiled at her. It wasn't meant to be. I turned back to Gale. "You said 7 years, right? Show me the casks, show me the presses, show me the parts nobody thinks matter until they're gone." His mouth opened, closed. Then he bowed so deeply, I thought his spine might lodge a formal complaint. I will, Your Majesty. I swear it." "Good," I said, "because I want to understand what I just saved." Behind us, the assistants were quietly unraveling. "I'll need to reschedule. Who's covering the ledger? The grain projections. Someone get a cloak. She can't go out like." The custodian raised a hand. It was a small gesture, but the noise died. He watched me for a moment, his eyes bright in a way that had nothing to do with protocol. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but there was something dangerously close to emotion underneath it. "I will inform the remaining petitioners," he said, bowing. "It will be encouraging to tell them that the Queen is personally honoring the traditions of the realm." He straightened, smiling in a way that made him look 10 years younger. "Go well, Your Majesty." I paused, glanced back at the throne, still gleaming, still beautiful, still offensively cold, and then at the bottle in my hand. "Someone can melt that thing," I said, "or repurpose it. Ice sculpture. Weapon. I don't care." A few seconds later, I was walking out of the grand hall with a farmer, a rare bottle of alcohol, and a growing suspicion that this job involved way more field trips than it'd been promised. Behind me, paperwork trembled in fear. And honestly, good. Chapter 272, Slowing the Harvest. Book 4. I didn't make it 10 steps out of the grand hall before reality caught up with me again. Reality, in this case, wore Lola's face, carried a clipboard, and was surrounded by a loose halo of anxious-looking people who all seemed to be talking at once while pretending they absolutely weren't. She stood near the base of the wide marble stairs, chin lifted, listening to 3 people at the same time and somehow understanding all of them. One was gesturing wildly with both hands. Another kept nodding like his neck was on a faulty hinge. The third was holding a stack of papers. Classic Lola. I spotted her first, so naturally, I did the sensible thing. I took Gale by the hand and ducked sideways. not dramatically, just casually stepped off the main path, guiding him toward a line of manicured shrubs that flanked the hall's exterior like they were trying very hard to look decorative and not like excellent cover. Gale startled when I grabbed him, stiffening like he thought he was about to be arrested by destiny itself. "It's fine," I murmured under my breath. "In just avoiding my own administration. Happens more than you think." We didn't make it far because people noticed. A ripple passed through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Murmurs followed us, soft at first, then growing as heads turned and fingers pointed. Was that the Queen? Did she just... Where is she going? Gael froze, eyes wide, shoulders tense, clutching his hands together like he might be arrested by shrubbery. I peeked back out. Several people were already pointing, not rudely exactly, but with that hushed excitement people get when reality does something unexpected and they don't know whether they're allowed to clap. I sighed. So much for subtlety. Lola's gaze swept the crowd, eyes flicking toward me in an assessing way that meant she'd already clocked the bottle in my hand, the dirt-stained farmer at my side, and the fact that I was absolutely about to cause a scheduling incident. I straightened, stepped back onto the walkway like I hadn't just tried to vanish into decorative foliage, and walked toward her at an easy pace, Gale trailing after me like a man who had, accidentally, joined a parade. "Hey," I said cheerfully, as if we'd planned this. "Quick update. I'm heading to a Salon farm to inspect the creation of the traditional drink." Lola blinked as I gestured at Gale with the bottle. "Gael here is out on the fields. And apparently we want to turn it into tagrain?" The whispers spiked again. I felt it this time, that prickling awareness crawling up my spine, the weight of eyes and expectations pressing in from all sides. People stood straighter. A few bowed reflexively and others stared, then snapped their gazes away the second I glanced in their direction, cheeks coloring as if eye contact with me might be contagious. "Queen," someone murmured, reverent and awed and a little afraid. I hated that word in crowds. Lola inhaled slowly through her nose, then nodded once. "It is the reason we're still here," she said evenly. "We need to increase the farming area and put in 2-month crops, because our supplies are dwindling." People leaned in, hungry for context, for meaning, for reassurance that there was a plan and someone competent was holding it. I scanned the surrounding faces, merchants with ink-stained fingers, guards trying to look neutral while very much listening. A woman in a simple dress clutching a basket, eyes full of curiosity. A pair of scribes pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. When my gaze brushed over them, they flinched, then bowed or looked away, murmuring apologies under their breath like it'd caught them sneaking a peek at something sacred. Great. Now I was a jump scare. "I don't like it," I said, keeping my voice low but letting the frustration bleed through anyway. "Count Itzel is marching toward my land, and I'm stuck here." The words tasted bitter as they left my mouth, the weight of distance and delay pressing hard against my ribs. Every instinct I had screamed to move, to respond, to get ahead of the problem instead of watching it grow teeth while I was buried in logistics. Lola's hand came up, gentle but firm, resting against my arm. "I know, lady," she said, "but we can't move without provisions." She glanced at the surrounding people, then back at me. "Not everyone is like you," she continued, "and can eat on Earth. We need to take an army with us, and also supplies. That means food." She exhaled, shoulders dipping just slightly. And then something happened. "Our production has fallen by more than half. The Altandai Minister of Agriculture is on it," so she trailed off and looked at me meaningfully. I stared at her for a second, then smiled. "Dimitri already set up the government?" Lola shrugged, lips twitching despite herself. "He's efficient," she said. Then she tilted her head, studying me. "While you..." She shook her head. "Sorry, overworked." That stung mostly because it was accurate. "Can you stop by?" she asked. "Ask what's wrong." I snorted. Let's throw Queen at it and it'll be solved." Lola actually blushed, color creeping up her cheeks as she glanced at the surrounding people, suddenly very interested in her clipboard again. "Please," she muttered. I laughed under my breath. "You're lucky you're adorable." Her face turned full red as she pointed toward the edge of the square. "Take Jabari," she said, gesturing at a line of carriages waiting nearby. "Hell, take you to the minister and the fields." There were at least 10 carriages, all different sizes and designs, some ornate, some plain, drawn by beasts I hadn't seen up close yet, and she pointed at one in particular. It was drawn by a Tornex. The creature stood shorter than a horse, but broader through the shoulders. Its build was compact and powerful, like someone had taken a big cat and asked it politely to carry infrastructure. Its fur was a warm, tawny brown streaked with darker markings, muscles rolling subtly beneath its coat as it shifted its weight. Its head was feline, its eyes intelligent, and its ears flicked back and forth to track movement and sound. Thick, padded paws rested against the stone, claws retracted but visible, and a long tail swayed behind it in slow, controlled arcs. It looked like it could pull the carriage through a wall if properly motivated. Yuki's voice echoed in my memory, bright and breathless, recounting her dungeon adventure in exhaustive detail, including a tangent about Altandai transport methods. Altandai uses horses the most, then others based on purpose. The most cute and expensive is the tonics for rough terrain. They're super efficient and really loyal if you feed them dried fish. Sure thing, I said, nodding. I motioned for Gale to follow, and waved to Jabari, who stood near the carriage, tall and broad-shouldered, his expression calm and professional in the way of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised by much anymore. Minister of Agriculture, I said as we climbed aboard. Whoever that is. Then we'll see. Jabari dipped his head. As you wish, Your Majesty. Inside, the carriage was fine, not fancy, or gilding or velvet. Just sturdy benches, reinforced corners, storage hooks along the walls, and small slitted windows that let in light and air without sacrificing security. Gael sat across from me, knees pressed together, hands folded so tightly they'd gone pale. He looked like he was still processing the fact that he'd just been commandeered into a royal inspection trip instead of quietly returning to his fields. You okay? I asked. He blinked, then nodded too quickly. Yes, Majesty. I'd never been in a carriage like this. I glanced around. You're not missing much. It doesn't even have cup holders. He didn't know what that meant, but he smiled politely anyway. The carriage lurched forward, Tornix's muscles flexing as it pulled us smoothly into motion. The city rolled past the windows in fragments, stupid rosy buildings, my banners snapping in the breeze, people pausing mid-task to stare as we passed. I felt it again, that ripple of attention, the way my presence bent the air around me whether I wanted it to or not. Everyone knew I was the queen, as if my presence was on by default. I leaned back, exhaled, and let my head rest against the wooden wall. Have to ask Mom how to turn this off. Okay, Charlie. Field trip. Try not to accidentally start a revolution or dismantle an agricultural system before lunch. The city thinned as we moved outward, stone giving way to packed earth, tall buildings shrinking into warehouses and granaries. The smell changed too. Less incense and oil, more soil and grain, and something faintly sweet that clung to the air. Gale straightened, eyes brightening as familiar sights appeared through the window. That way, he mumbled, pointing. Those fields, that's where Salane is grown. I followed his gaze, watching the land stretch out ahead of us, patchworked with rows of crops, workers moving like ants between them, the rhythm of labor steady and unglamorous. This was the part people didn't see when they talked about kingdoms and power. This was the part that fed everyone else, and apparently, it was breaking. We didn't even make it out of the city before reality decided to put its boot on our throat. The carriage slowed first, and then stopped. The Tornix huffed, claws scraping stone as it settled into an annoyed crouch, tail flicking once in a way that suggested it had opinions about delays. I cracked one eye open and immediately regretted it. City gates. Guards stood in a loose formation, spears angled just enough to look official without screaming, were scared. Their armor was practical, not ceremonial, scratched and worn in places that told me these weren't parade guards. One of them stepped forward and lifted a hand. Halt. Inspection, he said, voice flat. Declare cargo. Jabari leaned forward from the driver's bench. Royal Transit, he said calmly. On Her Majesty's business. The guard didn't even blink. And a god of war. That was not the response we were aiming for. Open the carriage, another guard added, already circling to the side. We've had smugglers trying that line all morning. I pinched the bridge of my nose and inhaled slowly. On the upside, this meant the system worked. No one was just waving Queen through checkpoints like it was a coupon code. On the downside, I was very tired. Jabari tried again, voice still polite, still professional. I am Jabari, appointed royal courier and security escort. You may confirm. Everyone's appointed something these days, the guard cut in. Open it. I could hear Gale breathing faster across from me, hands tightening around the bottle in his lap like it was an anchor. He looked ready to apologize for existing. Fine. I pushed the carriage door open from the inside and stood. The guards froze actually froze. Eyes widened, spears dipped. One of them actually took a half step back like he'd just realized the carriage might bite him. I stepped down onto the stone, my amazing heels hitting with a satisfying clink, cloak shifting around my shoulders. The morning light caught just right, frost blue glimmering faintly along the edges of my mana, like it couldn't quite turn itself off. Or maybe I showed off. Sue me. I smiled. Quick question, I said lightly. Did any of you happen to see me in the sky during the fight? Silence, and then nods. Several nods, immediate and enthusiastic. One guy nodded so hard his helmet clanked. Yes, Your Majesty, someone blurted. We. That's fine, I waved it off. Good work. You should stop anyone, even me. But now we've confirmed it is indeed me. Can we get to the gate opening part? The gate captain snapped upright as if a string had been pulled. Open the gate, now. The runes flared, and the massive doors began to part. Keep up the good work. Alt-Handai relies on you. I climbed back into the carriage, sat down, and leaned back just as the Tornix surged forward, clearly pleased to be moving again. Behind us, I heard a hurried chorus of apologies fading into the distance. Gael stared at me like I'd just personally rewritten physics. Being queen is convenient, he said carefully. I let out a long sigh and took a sip from the Salen. The burn was familiar now, grounding and sharp enough to cut through the lingering irritation. I wish, I muttered. I don't even have time to visit my favorite pub. Gale blinked. You have a favorite pub? Oh yeah, I said wistfully. Patrick knew me better than I know myself. That's how you know it's genuine love. He looked faintly horrified and overwhelmed at the same time. We rode in companionable quiet for a while after that, the city thinning behind us as fields took over the horizon. Rows of crops stretched out in orderly patterns, interrupted by the occasional watchtower or low stone structure humming faintly with magic. That's when I noticed the guards. Not city patrols. These were stationed units, posted near the fields themselves, armor dusted with soil instead of soot. They watched the land, not the road, eyes tracking invisible lines I couldn't see. Those new? I asked. Gale nodded. After the Grandmasters fell, some things stopped working right. They were placed to prevent panic. That didn't reassure me in the slightest. We finally pulled up near a massive barn complex, wood reinforced with stone supports and etched with sigils along its beams. It was bigger than some city blocks I'd seen, its doors thrown wide to reveal a constant stream of workers hauling crates, tools, and blowing apparatuses in and out. More guards here too. I leaned forward and rapped on the carriage wall. Jabari. Yes, Majesty, stay here, I said, both of you. Gale nodded as I hopped down and headed straight for the barn with no announcement or waiting. Just me and my bad mood. Inside, the air changed immediately, warm and humid, thick with the smell of soil, sap, crushed leaves, and something metallic underneath, like magic had been sweating. Light filtered through tall windows, catching on glass tubes, rune-etched trays, and suspended crystals pulsing faintly with contained energy. This wasn't a barn. This was a laboratory wearing agricultural cosplay. Tables were everywhere, covered in experiments at various stages of this is fine and this might explode. Plants grew in suspended beds of glowing soil, vines curling around copper frames, leaves marked with sigils that slowly shifted and reconfigured themselves. And, in the middle of it all, Shad. He moved from one station to the next with the same unhurried focus I remembered, hands clasped behind his back as he leaned in, nodded, adjusted a rune here, snipped a leaf there. He crooned to himself, completely absorbed. I took 3 steps in before a vine slid across my path, not threatening, just there. Wait, Shad said without looking up. This is a delicate calibration. I stopped. For half a second, I was back in his greenhouse chamber, vines around my wrists, the faint scent of sap and crushed leaves in the air. Except now, I was wearing a crown. Didn't feel like it. I waited. Shad finished his adjustment, scribbled a note onto a slate with a piece of charcoal, then finally turned toward me. Oh, he said mildly. You're here. I stared at him. You asked to be Minister of Agriculture. Yes, he said cheerfully. Isn't it wonderful? He waved me toward a side door. Come, This place is too noisy for proper thinking. The side study was smaller, quieter, lined with shelves packed with scrolls, ledgers, and pressed plants labeled in careful handwriting. A simple wooden table sat in the center, two chairs pulled up opposite each other. We sat. Shad looked different, still composed, but there was something lighter about him, like a man who'd finally been given permission to stop pretending he cared about politics. I asked specifically for agriculture, he said, savoring the word. Not trade, not logistics. Agriculture. He smiled, genuinely. It means I solve problems with plants, all I have ever wanted. I leaned back, studying him. You look happy. He nodded. I am. That somehow made the knot in my stomach tighten. Then what's wrong? I asked. Shad's smile faded. Slowly, he reached for a map pinned to the wall and brought it over, spreading it across the table. It showed Al-Tandai and its surrounding fields, marked with symbols and faint glowing lines. Our fields, he began, are supported by a magical undercurrent. It enriches the soil, accelerates growth, stabilizes yields. He tapped several points. It is regulated through 5 guard posts positioned around the farmland. He tapped on the barn. This is one of them. The lines glowed faintly, pulsing in a slow, uneven rhythm. During the fighting, Shad continued, voice tightening just a little. Someone accessed the system. My jaw clenched. Someone loyal to the Grandmasters. Perhaps, he said, or simply someone who knew where to look. He traced a finger along one of the lines. Instead of boosting the harvest, he paused, then looked up at me. It is slowing it. I stared at the map, cold creeping into my spine. Sabotage, I said flatly. Yes, Shad agreed. Elegant, subtle. If not caught, it would starve the city quietly over months.